Volume 7, Chapter 300, Ice Mountain. In the middle of a vast meadow, a huge ice mountain was standing proudly. Atop that mountain, Kyle was lying with a peaceful expression. From his even breathing, it was evident he had been resting for a while. However, if one looked closely, they would notice that the mountain was actually made up of hundreds of frozen insects stacked on top of each other. The alive insects crawling in the grass were attempting to climb, but because of the uneven edges of the mountain, they were failing miserably. A frustrating cry echoed in the distance, and Kyle lifted his head to look, but it was too far away. That's why he opted to close his eyes again. In the past 2 weeks, he has pretty much figured out everything about this place. First, the field was vast and had no boundaries. Second, after every few hours, some new individuals would arrive in this place just like him. And third, the mechanical voice never told anyone what they had to do in this place. Kyle let out a sigh. He did consider helping the new arrivals, but he was just too exhausted. Besides, it wasn't his responsibility to save everyone. After all, he was stuck in this place too. Yet he couldn't help but think deeply when the loud cry sounded again. Why do I feel like I have heard this voice before? No, it's not Giant, so who is it? After thinking for a few seconds, Kyle threw the matter at the back of his head. Whoever it is, that person is not alone, so I will check after a while. Far away from Kyle's location, two young elves were trying their best to calm the frustrated brown-haired youth. In the end, the girl in the team reached out to grab the youth from behind with a sigh. "Nine, calm down, you are attracting more insects." Nine froze in his actions. He gazed at the beautiful pair of hands and blinked. Amidst the hundreds of insects surrounding them from all directions, Nine leaned into the hug with a sheepish smile. "Okay, my dear Ellie, I will follow your command." The person standing beside them hissed with anger and immediately grabbed Ellie's hand to separate them from each other. Nine glared at the green-haired elf before rubbing his fingers on Ellie's wrist with a sulking expression. "Ellie, why did you bring him with you? You know I hate third wheels." Ellie giggled and slowly slapped his hand away. "Rowan is my old friend, don't say anything bad about him." A vein bulged out in Rowan's forehead. He couldn't believe the duo was flirting in the midst of hundreds of insects. Suddenly, a crawling insect jumped at Nine and Rowan slashed it with his weapon. "You two stop it, let's find an exit, or else I don't think we can survive in this place." Nine looked at Rowan with a sigh and refocused on the insects. It's been a while since he found the two elves. At first, after recovering, he only wanted to find Ellie and spend some time with her, but she was not alone. That's why he had to bring along the third wheel, Rowan. The trio killed and slowly moved around the vast field, but even after an hour they found nothing. Suddenly, with uneven breath, Ellie pointed his finger at the distance with a surprised gasp. "What's that?" Nine and Rowan both narrowed their eyes toward the place she was pointing and mumbled simultaneously. "A small mountain," Nine cursed when another insect pounced at him from the left side. He kicked it away and started walking toward the mountain. "Whatever it is, let's go and check." After 10 minutes, the trio arrived below an ice mountain. The land all around the mountain was frozen into ice. Moreover, the mountaintop was hidden in a layer of white smoke. Still, the trio did not dare to get near because thousands of insects were crawling around the mountain. Nine shuddered and rubbed his arms when cold air brushed past his skin. What with this place, the temperature in the field is normal, so what's an ice mountain doing here? With narrow eyes, Rowan suddenly killed an insect and bent down to grab one of many frozen, uneven-shaped rocks lying in the grass. His eyes widened instantly. Nine grabbed the rock from his hand and inspected it. A shocked expression appeared on his face. "OMG, it's the insect. How did it freeze to death?" Simultaneously, the trio snapped their heads to look at the mountain. It was clearly made of many similar rocks. An ominous feeling surged inside Rowan's heart as he looked at the duo. "Guys, let's leave. I think this place is dangerous." Nine and Ellie both immediately agreed. Fighting with insects was thousands of times better than being frozen to death. Slowly, the trio turned around to leave. However, at that exact moment, a loud voice echoed in the air. "You think after stepping in my territory you can leave?" The trio froze in their spots and chills ran down their spines. With sweat trickling down his forehead, Nine grabbed his sword and mumbled to Ellie and Rowan. "Run," yet they did not even budge from their spots. No way they were going to leave him behind. Due to the tense atmosphere, Nine failed to notice the fact that the voice was very familiar and quiet young as well. Nine grabbed his sword and was ready to fight a life-and-death battle, but then the voice sounded again. Moreover, there was a hint of amusement in the voice. "Well, that's it, now that you have stepped inside my territory. It would be bad if I let you go. How about having some tea with me?" Nine eyes widened when he finally sensed the familiarity in the voice behind him. He instantly turned back and gasped. "Wow. Kyle, is it you?" Kyle grabbed the corner of his hair with a thoughtful look. "Yes, if you could just ignore my hair and eye color, it's me." Nine laughed out and jumped at him for a hug. How could he fail to recognize him? After all, he had already seen those silver hair. Chapter 301, It's Your Work. With a soft sigh, Kyle tapped Nine back. Enough, you are going to suffocate me. 9 sucked in a deep breath and slowly released him from the hug with a smile. He was happy to see Kyle again. After all, the last vision he saw was everything but good. He couldn't help but peek at the ice mountain behind Kyle. 9 glanced at his stunned friends and threw his arm on Kyle's shoulder while pointing at the mountain. Don't tell me it's your work. However, a nonchalant shrug was all he got in return. 9 rubbed his chin with a raised brow. Bro, I feel like you have become more annoying. Slowly, he dragged Kyle to look at the two elves. By the way, this is Rowan and this is Ellie. They are my friends. Rowan and Ellie both nodded at Kyle, but then suddenly 9 lowered his voice to whisper in his ear. Remember, I told you about a beautiful girl in the past. It was Ellie, hee. Your friend is not single anymore. A barely visible frown appeared between 9's brows when he sensed Kyle's body temperature. It was too low, however it vanished within a second. Suddenly, Rowan glanced at Ellie and stepped closer to Kyle with a shocked expression. Wait, 9 called you Kyle, right? The same Kyle who caused a huge commotion in front of the realm gate. Kyle was going to nod, but then 9 raised his finger and shook it in front of Rowan. Nope, this isn't the same Kyle. The one you saw had a huge phoenix, but this one doesn't. 9 gasped and looked at him with wide eyes. Wait, where's Bia, Kyle? Why don't I see her? Don't tell me she ran away because you forgot to feed her on time. Kyle rolled his eyes and slapped his arm away. He glanced at the hundreds of insects around them and clicked his tongue. Guys, let's climb the mountain. It's not clean, I mean it's not safe here. The three of them exchanged glances and trailed after him to climb the mountain made of uneven rocks, or more specifically made of hundreds of frozen insects. However, unlike Kyle, they quickly began to rub their arms, their breath forming wisps of smoke in the frigid air. It was too cold, 9 groaned. Still, he couldn't help but mumble with a curious expression. Kyle, can you tell me how you froze the insects? Kyle stopped in his tracks. Instantly, icy blue flames appeared around his body. Under 3 pairs of stunned eyes, the flames traveled downward with lightning-fast speed. All the insects clawing on the mountain shrieked as the flames enclosed them in a blanket. After the flames vanished, many similar uneven frozen rocks appeared in their place. 9 breath faltered for a second as he gazed at Kyle. The same blue flames I saw. Does that mean everything I saw is going to come true? No, I am not going to believe the vision this time. Instead, I am going to change it no matter what. He clenched his fist. It was truly unbelievable that Kyle and Alec were going to fight to death in the future. They were friends. Moreover, from Alec's devastated expression, he was sure that something was wrong with him. Soon, they reached the top of the mountain, but the trio sitting with Kyle was regretting the moment they decided to follow him. Especially, Rowan and Ellie, both of them were trembling. 9 inched closer to Ellie and grabbed her hands shamelessly before throwing a resentful glare at Kyle. So, what's the plan, because within a few hours we are going to freeze to death? Kyle blinked and snapped his fingers. Immediately, 2 hovering fireballs appeared in front of the trio. Is it fine now? 9 snapped. Are you kidding me? The temperature around us is even lower than the depth of the ocean. You think 2 tiny fireballs can warm us? Kyle rubbed his temples with a sigh. I didn't do it on purpose. I checked this field as much as I could, but there's no way out. So I think our only option is to fight the insects until we find an exit or until the mechanical voice guides us. 9 agreed instantly and stood up. Okay, let's fight. It's hundreds of times better than waiting. Kyle hummed, but before they could leave, a frustrated voice echoed in the air. Where is he? I cannot believe I have to check every chamber just to find him. Simultaneously, all of them snapped their heads up to look at the sky, and Kyle immediately recognized the small glowing ball floating in the distance. Haley, he never thought he would be so happy to see the winged boar. Kyle waved his hand energetically toward the glowing ball. The ball froze midair, and the trio standing beside Kyle stepped back with shock when the ball turned into a huge winged boar. Haley's wings stretched out wide as he landed right in front of Kyle, yet the happiness from Kyle's face disappeared the moment his feet touched the mountaintop. A loud cracking sound was all Kyle heard before the ground beneath his feet crumbled. His eyes widened as the stacked rocks scattered in all directions. However, before anyone could tumble down from the mountain, a glowing shield appeared around their bodies, keeping them safe. 9 clutched his pounding chest, feeling a bit sweaty and nervous as he realized he was floating midair. Just like him, Ellie and Rowan were equally frightened. He gazed at Kyle with bated breath, and a bitter smile spread across his face because the latter was floating midair without the shield. With a relieved sigh, Kyle took back his stretched hand. He was going to grab 2 of them if they lost their balance. Opposite them, Haley clicked his tongue. Such a weak mountain. He stopped mid-sentence and gazed at the scattered rocks that were once a mountain. Wait, how did this mountain appear in this place? He gazed at Kyle and immediately knew how. With narrowed eyes, Haley landed on the grass. He flapped his wings and the insects around them scattered in different directions. The round shields around 9, Ellie, and Rowan evaporated into thin air as they neared the ground. 9 sighed with relief and looked at Kyle. I am never going to climb a mountain with you from now on. Chapter 302. 3 options. Kyle chuckled at Nine's words as he landed beside him. Immediately he gazed at Haley because the latter was looking at him with serious eyes. He cleared his throat and took a step closer to Haley. So what brought you here? However, the boar was not in a good mood. He flipped his wings to make it clear that Kyle should stay 10 meters away from him. You rascal, do you even know how much I have to suffer just to find you? At first, I thought if only I sensed Bia's location I could easily get to you, but when I found her she was alone and you were nowhere to be seen. Haley grumbled. He couldn't believe his superior senses were defeated by a mere artifact the kid was wearing. That's why no matter how much he tried, he was unable to sense Kyle. After a few seconds, he took a deep breath to calm down because he was not here to scold him. He was here to tell him about something very important. When Kyle noticed the boar's serious expression, a frown appeared between his brows. What happened? Haley's gaze sharpened as he glanced at the trio standing behind him. Noticing his gaze, Kyle waved his hands. It's okay. They are my friends. With a nod, Haley began from the moment he left Kyle's side. He went to search for the old guardian, however, when he found him. The guardian's illusionary figure was fighting with Gil, a pseudo-divine being from the dark race. Nine and the elves were confused when they heard the words dark race and pseudo-divine. Seeing their confused expression, Haley stopped midway. He thought with a sigh that he had to tell them everything from the start. Yet before he could explain further, Kyle beat him to it. The more the boar heard Kyle's explanation, the more stunned he became because the kid knew almost everything about the dark race. Moreover, his knowledge did not end there. He even knew about the various powerful ranks above SSS plus rank. In the end, when Kyle was done explaining, Nine, Ellie, and Rowan's expressions were blank. The trio was too shocked because the information shattered their views. They could not believe that in their whole life, they thought SSS plus rank strength was the end of mortal powers. Yet many otherworldly divine and supreme beings existed in the universe. Nine let out a trembling breath and gestured at Haley to continue. However, the boar had a serious question he wanted to ask Kyle. How did you find out about all this? This knowledge had been hidden a long time ago. Kyle hesitated as he gazed at Nine, but in the end, he answered while omitting out the part of his bloodline and mind space. A few months ago, two huge white slits eyes appeared in my dream. They gave me the information. I don't know anything about the eyes, but they looked powerful. Haley closed his eyes in deep contemplation, eyes with white slits. Yet he was unable to find the owner of such eyes from his memories. He shook his head and silently threw the matter at the back of his head before resuming from where he paused. Right, while fighting, Gil saw me. I wanted to hide but failed. As I am the guardian of the last treasure land, I cannot leave that place until the divine essence is gone. That's why now he knows that all the divine essence is gone. Haley inhaled a sharp breath. He practically ignored Nine, Ellie, and Rowan, who were ogling at him with all the focus they could muster, and fixed his gaze on Kyle. The old guardian had stopped Gil, but he cannot stop the dark race. The moment Gil knew about me, he informed Emian, the current leader of the dark race. Right now, Emian and a large number of people from the dark race are ruthlessly searching for the person who has the divine essence. Kyle's expression chilled when he heard the familiar name. He mumbled under his breath, Emian and all those people from the dark race. They are searching for me, right? Haley nodded with a hardened expression. I know with your strength and the presence-hiding artifact you are wearing you can escape easily, but Kyle snapped his eyes up to stare directly into Haley's eyes. He knew that if the people from the dark race were after him, they would probably kill each and every person they encounter in their path, and he despised the thought that a lot of people had to die because of him. But what? Haley gazed at Kyle's clenched fists and shook his head. The guardian who is stopping Gil doesn't know anything about you. He had already chosen the people he wanted to send out from the realm safely. Yet everything changed when Gil found out about the divine essence. He had been stuck in the pseudo-divine rank for a long time, and the divine essence could help him break through the bottleneck. Moreover, if he stepped into the divine rank, the old guardian wouldn't be able to stop him, and he could leave this realm forcefully. Haley paused for a second when he noticed how tense Kyle was. Still, Kyle shook his head and asked for him to continue. Naturally, if Gil left, the whole dark race is going to follow him. That's why the dark race is doing everything to find the divine essence. Haley suddenly gazed at Nine. For some reason, the kid turned too pale when he heard that the dark race could leave this realm. He frowned but ignored it, thinking maybe the latter was too shocked. Kid, just like me, the guardian is not allowed to interfere with the things happening in the realm. Also, I am unable to take back the essence from you because after a treasure is taken out from a castle, it cannot be placed back as it's against the rule. So, now you have three options. First, surrender and give the essence to the dark race. However, if you did, the dark race would still kill everyone. Not to mention the fact that if Gil reached the divine rank, he would be released from this realm. Second, hide until the realm exit is opened. And third, fight back. Chapter 303, The Resonite Gem. Kyle gazed up in the sky. It was clear. He let out a sharp breath and slowly opened his fists. From the boar's words, it was evident that he had to make a choice, and he knew what he wanted to do. Unlike him, Nine and the elves were doing their best to process the mind-boggling information that had the power to shake the world outside. The trio was still reeling in shock as Kyle rose to his feet. His expression was completely devoid of emotion, a stark contrast to how he had appeared earlier when they were speaking casually. I don't know how precious the divine essence is, but I took it, so I am going to take responsibility. I will choose the third option. I am going to fight, plus I've got some debts to settle with Emion. Haley's eyebrow twitched when he heard his last sentence. I left you alone for only more than 2 weeks, and you have already managed to make enemies with Emion. Not anyone else but Emion. Kyle gave a curt nod. It didn't matter if they were enemies. He had already marked the dark race on his blacklist. He knew he would have to confront them sooner or later. The current situation, where they were relentlessly hunting him, gave him a perfect excuse to fight back. A cold smirk appeared at the corner of his lips. I believe I would rather be the hunter than the prey. Haley let out a sigh. If possible, he wanted to suggest that Kyle should hide because he saw immense potential in the kid. Regardless, he knew that the decision was not his to make. Beside them, amidst his astonishment, Nine cracked his knuckles and approached Kyle with a wicked smirk just like his. Hey, do you think you are the only one who likes hunting? Just like you, I have some unfinished business with the dark race that I want to settle. Kyle arched an eyebrow with a faint smile. He was actually considering the idea of leaving the trio behind. But it looked like that wasn't going to be an option. Suddenly, he gave Nine a scrutinizing look. He is not weak, almost C+ rank, yet the smile on his face stiffened as Nine leaned in to whisper in a hushed tone. You don't have to pay me, just give me some divine essence. I don't know what it does exactly, but the whole dark race is after it, so it's gotta be something pretty darn good, right? Behind Nine, the elves glanced at each other and grabbed their weapons tightly. Ellie playfully tapped Nine's shoulder. Don't you dare to leave me behind, or else I am rejecting the proposal you made a few months ago. Nine's expression sank within a second. He grabbed her hand with utter disbelief. No way, tell me you are joking, dear. Finally, Kyle could not take it anymore. The sight of his friend crying his eyes out was just too painful. He silently went to talk to Haley. No matter what, first we need to leave this place. Do you have any idea how we can leave? Haley's eyes wandered around before a strange expression appeared on his face. This is the second last chamber of this treasure island. Not many can make it here without completing the tests of the other chambers. Kyle blinked with confusion. Huh, really, but there is no way out of this place. The bickering trio behind him instantly gathered around the boar, eagerly waiting for the answer. After all, who wants to deal with insects all day and night? Haley flapped his wings and with a leap soared into the sky. His loud voice echoed in the air as he narrowed his eyes in the distance. This is a time limit chamber. So you need to survive until the time is over. The exit will open automatically. The moment his words fell, a bright portal appeared out of thin air behind Kyle. Haley gazed at the portal and turned into a white ball of light before floating around Kyle. Now it seems your test here is complete. You can leave, but your friends. He dragged his sentence and glanced at the trio standing behind him. The trio was visibly upset. Rowan hastily reached out to Kyle with knitted brows. How many days did you spend in this place? The trio looked at him eagerly, but his answer was anything but good. 612, a total of 14 days, I believe. Nine slumped down to the ground with a blank expression. Hey, this is a joke, right? Kyle shrugged his shoulders and grabbed the light floating around him. Haley, stay with them. I know you cannot help them, but your presence alone is enough to repel the insects. Also, Bia and the others might show up soon too. Once everyone's done, you can all come find me. Haley gave him a nod and Nine's face relaxed immediately. He grabbed Kyle's shoulder before the latter could jump in the portal. Remember, if it's dangerous, don't jump into a fight alone. With a nod, Kyle jumped into the portal. However, only after a few minutes did Haley remember a very important fact that made him cry out inwardly. Wait. You rascal, how am I going to find you when I cannot even sense your presence? At least, you should have removed the artifact. Nine and the two elves exchanged strange glances as the quiet boar suddenly began pacing with a serious expression. However, no matter how much they probed, they were not able to find out the reason behind his behavior. Meanwhile, after jumping into the portal, Kyle arrived in a similar white room. He glanced around. The room was filled with almost all types of weapons. Gleaming blades, intricately crafted bows, and an assortment of other armaments, each one radiating a strong aura. As he took a step forward, the mechanical voice sounded in the air. Congratulations, participant, for completing all the training designed for you. Please take any one weapon as your reward. Kyle smirked and shook his head as he glanced at the weapons. Usually, he would have taken everything one way or another, but a few people he knew needed good weapons, especially Giant and Nine. The duo had gotten stronger, but the weapons they were using were too weak. His eyes caught sight of rows of S-rank wands lined in a corner. One of the gleaming wands had an amber gem embedded in the middle. I know she can use a lot of weapons, but she doesn't use spells often. Even though Regia said she is a mage. A bright light in a corner reflected in his eyes and he immediately left the wands. The light was coming from a strange round gem sitting between the weapons. Kyle bent down and picked the gem. The moment his hands touched the gem, ripples formed on its pure white surface. Instantly, a strange current flashed around the gem and he tossed it away. What was that? The gem rolled inside the room as he rubbed his fingers. He was going to ignore it, but suddenly it burst into white particles. The particles were not attractive, but they gathered together to form a buzzing screen. The screen flickered with countless colors as they merged to show a scenery of a huge room filled with hundreds, not thousands of weapons. Kyle's eyes dilated when he saw a familiar figure walking in the screen. It was none other than the illusionary black-haired man he, Alec, and Giant saw after they left the last floor of the Tower of Opportunity. Yet unlike the emotionless eyes Kyle remembered, the man's eyes were twinkling with mirth. A joyful laughter rang out inside the room as the man in the screen flicked his finger to get rid of the smoke around him. The same white gem was floating beside him. Odiak, just how many weapons are you going to make? I feel like we are going to a war. In front of Kyle's eyes, another figure appeared inside the screen. It was a middle-aged, white-haired dwarf. The dwarf scoffed and tossed the hammer in his hand toward the black-haired man. James, stop messing around, I am busy. Also, why are you recording this? Resonite gems are rare nowadays, don't waste it. The dwarf held out his hand to grab the gem, but James vanished from his spot. Instantly, the dwarf cursed out loudly. Damn it, just how the hell did you change the simple skill into instant teleportation? Even though I can practically travel with the speed of light, but this skill is truly getting on my nerves. The atmosphere between them was harmonious as the two men bickered with each other carelessly. Kyle watched their interaction quietly. Yet, like a mirage, the smiles on their faces vanished when a bloody figure barged inside the room. The resonite gem floating around James dropped to the ground as he cried out with panic. Elizabeth, what happened to you? The image in front of Kyle blurred as the particles trembled, yet he heard it clearly when a new voice reverberated from the gem. James, calm down, I am fine. Don't speak, you are injured. I am going to hack the bastard who attacked you into millions of pieces. There was silence around Kyle for a second, but then Elizabeth's voice sounded again. I am fine, I am fine. I escaped on time, but Her voice faltered for a second as she hissed with pain. Planet Azure has been attacked. The attacker is none other than Azazel's third Shadow General. Within 2 days, they had conquered half of the planet. We need to immediately activate the shield you and Odiak had been preparing around the planet because their next destination is our home planet. James' voice was filled with resentment as he spat out one curse after another. That bastard Azazel, he had not even shown his face, yet his minions are getting so ahead of themselves. Who does he think he is? I swear I am going to put a hole in his skull sooner or later. Chapter 304. Too many questions. James' voice halted and a loud metallic sound reverberated from the screen. It was evident he picked up his weapon. Kyle breathed out as the voices grew further and further with each passing second. In the end, they vanished without a trace. There was silence in the room as the bright screen dimmed and lost its luster. Finally, it scattered around him and vanished. He massaged his temples with a grim expression. Why does it feel like I stumbled upon something that was meant to be kept hidden? Kyle grabbed his knee and unconsciously gazed at the countless weapons around him. Now the question is, did they win or did they lose the battle? Who is this Azazel? And the Shadow General they were talking about? His head throbbed with a powerful headache triggered by the countless unanswered questions in his mind. If they won, why is there no record about it? Not to mention the fact that even their names are forgotten. It's like the information had been wiped out completely. Doesn't that mean they saved the planet but they died in the battle? Still, if they died under the third Shadow General, what about the person named Azazel? He couldn't help but groan because the more he pondered it, the worse his headache became. In the end, Kyle tossed the matter at the back of his head. If I want answers, it looks like I'll have to coax Haley or meet the Realm Guardian who is currently fighting with Gil. Kyle gazed at the many swords present in the room, but they were not as strong as the one he had. So instead of taking a sword, he grabbed the lone blue spear placed in a corner. It was different from the other spears because its body was plain, and one side of the spear had a pointed edge resembling that of an arrow. I believe I can throw it at someone from a distance. He stepped back from the weapons and stood in the middle of the room. All right, I am done choosing. Open the exit so I can leave this place. The moment a portal appeared in front of him, he jumped inside without looking back. I believe I won't be able to visit any treasure island for a while. Tusk, what a pity. The sky outside was as clear as he remembered when Kyle appeared in front of the castle gate. He gazed at the majestic gate and mumbled slowly. They will probably take around 14 days to come out. With a chuckle, he spun the spear in his hand and gazed at the few black dots in the distance. I think I have a lot of work to do. His words faded in the air as he vanished from his spot, heading straight toward the nearest dot. After a few minutes in the distance, the air around one of the winged men diving towards a floating island trembled for a second. Suddenly, a strong force slammed into his body from behind, causing him to cry out in surprise and lose his balance. As he staggered forward, he realized the attacker wasn't finished yet. In the next second, a sharp pain stabbed his shoulder. Kyle knitted his brows. Is it because the spear is a little heavier? My aim was not perfect. He pulled out the spear from the man's shoulder without giving any heed to the pained cries spilling out from the man's mouth. It's fine, I guess it will get better with time. As he stabbed the man again, he activated the skill scent perception to check his surroundings. Instantly, countless scents flooded his senses, yet Kyle's focus was solely on the ones who emanated a nauseating feeling. Where's Emion and his minions who are searching for the divine essence? As the man's body dropped from the sky, Kyle dived down toward the scent of blood in the distance. His figure stopped midair above a group of people. An individual from the dark race was chasing after two young elves, a male and a female. Kyle abruptly landed in front of the running elves. The duo cried out in surprise and changed their direction to avoid him, but the said person did not even glance at them. Instead, Kyle raised his spear above his head, aiming at the man behind them. The man's eyes widened as Kyle appeared in front of him. He flapped his wings to fly backward, but Kyle smirked coldly. With a swift motion, he threw the spear and vanished from his spot. A loud cry echoed through the air, causing the running elves to pause and look back with held breaths. The man chasing after them was dead. Under their stunned eyes, Kyle retrieved his sword from the man's chest and picked up the spear from the ground. He looked at the elves and, after thinking for a second, beckoned them to come closer. Come here. The elves were visibly shaken. They glanced at each other. However, after a few seconds of contemplation, they mustered the courage to approach Kyle. After all, the latter just saved their lives. They gazed at the silver-haired youth and unconsciously, a bitter feeling spread out inside their chest. The human in front of them clearly looked younger than them, but he was so strong already. Kyle gave them a nod. Names, the male elf was the one who replied to him. I am Kshin and this is my sister Shui, thank you for saving us. No problem, do you both have friends who entered the realm together with you? The duo looked at each other with confusion. Ah, we do have a few. I believe you can contact them. If yes, ask everyone you know to spread the word that it's better to gather together. The more people the better, this place is too dangerous. Especially, Kyle pointed back at the winged man's dead body. These creatures, they are strong, but I don't think their number is big, so if large teams are formed, everyone will be able to fight back. After the elves nodded seriously, he started floating and pointed his finger in the distance. Also head toward east. I can sense that compared to the other sides, the east side is safer. As Kyle vanished from their sight, the elves gazed at each other. They quickly grabbed their communication devices to contact everyone they knew. Chapter 305. Calm down. Within just a few days, Kyle's words spread like wildfire and a lot of individuals came together to form teams. It didn't matter what race they belonged to because survival was everyone's priority. At first, there were conflicts over sharing resources, but when faced with a common threat, they put aside their disputes and united to fight back. The initial panic and chaos caused by the dark race started to subside. Moreover, the ones who had lost friends or suffered at the hands of the winged creatures were even brave enough to go after the lone individuals from the dark race. Despite everyone's initial doubts, many decided to follow Kyle's words and started heading towards the east, because whenever anyone heard that the words were spoken by a silver-haired youth, they could not help but remember the silver-haired youth who caused a big commotion in front of the realm gate. In the end, they realized they had no other choice but to trust the silver-haired youth who spread the word. After all, the supposed person was rumored to be the strongest because he had a legendary fire phoenix by his side. Unaware of the big uproar he caused, Kyle was busy searching for Emion and the group of individuals from the dark race who were after the divine essence. However, even after a few days, he was not able to find them. In the end, he secretly followed behind one of the winged men and found their base. Kyle's eyes narrowed as he cautiously peeked through the branches of the huge tree he was sitting on. A wide structure surrounded by many towering walls reflected in his eyes. He did not see any fortress around the uneven buildings built inside the structure, but the walls were strangely adorned with hundreds of dark symbols. A few winged men were flying in and out of the structure. I found this place quite easily, but should I enter or not? The air around the base was thick with an eerie energy, as if the very atmosphere was tainted by the wickedness that resides there. Kyle breathed out and jumped down from the tree to slowly land on the ground. His eyes turned cold when he heard an agonizing cry in the distance. The voice unmistakably belonged to a female. Instantly, he looked up but narrowed his eyes because the person who was dragging the female was not a man but a woman. However, a familiar pair of dark wings and horns adorned her figure. So they don't lack women in their race. Kyle closed his eyes to calm his troubled thoughts. He couldn't possibly reveal himself in front of so many enemies. With caution, he inched closer to the towering walls and traced one of the strange symbols. Is this an array? I don't really want to test it out. He shook his head and used instant teleportation to directly teleport to the other side of the walls. A curse slipped out from his mouth because he appeared just mere inches away from a sharp blade protruding out from the ground. Kyle wiped his forehead and slowly grabbed the tip of the blade and moved it away from his face. He looked around. Many similar blades were fixed in front of the walls, probably to kill those who dared to jump inside the structure. He gazed at the many buildings and slowly started moving. The space around him was quiet except for a few individuals of the dark race flying in the air, maybe because almost everyone was out to harm the ones who entered the realm. The moment Kyle stepped in another direction, a winged man walked out from one of the buildings. The man's hands were bloodied as he wiped them with a cloth and tossed it away with a click of his tongue. Tusk, he died already. I thought I could send him to the execution chamber to get some reward, but too weak. He spat out and spread his wings to fly, but a cold hand grabbed his mouth from behind and dragged him toward a corner. Kyle eyed the struggling man in his grip. He was not strong, barely B+ rank. Don't make noise or else I am going to slit your throat. The moment Kyle's words fell, a painful sensation spread across the man's neck. Shivers ran down the man's spine and he immediately ceased his struggle because he could feel the sharp edge of the weapon pressing against his neck. Slowly, Kyle lowered his hand from his mouth. What is the execution chamber and where is it? The man trembled as the blade pressed further into his throat. He cried out, "It's the place where we kill the outsiders. It's in the center of the base." However, before he could finish his words, Kyle swiftly slashed his throat. Blood dripped down Kyle's sword as he coldly glanced at the lifeless body lying on the ground. Execution chamber, huh? What an ominous name. With a blink, he vanished from his spot, heading straight toward the center of the base. Another person from the dark race appeared in front of him. However, he quietly silenced the man and ran toward the center of the base. Why am I having a bad feeling about this? Meanwhile, in the center of the dark race base, a large platform engraved with black symbols was built. Dozens of people from the dark race were gathered in front of the platform as they watched with glee when the many captured outsiders were dragged to the platform. A few muffled cries rang out when one of the winged men mercilessly pushed them onto the platform. Opposite the platform, a chair was floating midair. Sitting atop the chair was none other than Emion. He chuckled when one of the captured youths glared at him with bloody eyes. Emion raised his hand to hush the excited crowd. He stared back at the youth. The blue-haired boy was truly handsome. Still, what a pity he was a man. I praise your confidence. You are the first person who attacked me out of nowhere. I would have probably suffered a lot of injuries if you were stronger. He laughed out when the anger in the youth's eyes increased. On the platform from behind the angry youth, a disheveled golden-haired boy whispers slowly, "Alec, please calm down, or else we are probably going to die today." Chapter 306, Get Caught. Kyle's eyebrow twitched when he arrived at the scene. He couldn't help but muttered with disbelief. How the hell did they get caught? Among the individuals thrown mercilessly onto the platform, Alec and Carcel's figures stood out like a sore thumb. Kyle wiped his forehead as he looked at the small crowd gathered in front of the platform. Emion, the one he had been searching for, was also there. Suddenly, right before his eyes, Alec snapped at Emion with wild, crazy eyes. His voice was so hoarse that Kyle almost thought it belonged to someone else. Wait, you idiot, don't make him angry. I have not figured out how to save you yet." From Carcel's ugly expression, Kyle was sure the latter was dragged here due to Alec. Just what the hell did they do? Normally, the dark race would have killed them on the spot, but instead they have set up a special execution platform for them. Kyle groaned when a sharp headache stabbed his head. He watched as two winged men stepped onto the platform carrying sharp blades. They were probably thinking of beheading the captured outsiders. At that moment, Emion rose from his chair and directed an evil smirk towards the platform. However, Kyle was sure that his malicious gaze was fixed on Alec. "I don't think I have time for any plan." "Hey, Bia." The moment Kyle called out her name, an irritated voice sounded inside his head. "Don't you dare speak to me. How dare you leave me behind when the situation was so dangerous? I believe you are strong enough to handle everything alone. So why are you calling me now?" She paused for a second. "Also, it's a secret, okay? But I heard you cursing you under her breath when she heard you left alone. Not just her, even Giant was sharpening his blade, ready to knock some sense into your head." Kyle blinked and rubbed his nose, but didn't he ask Haley to follow up once they were done? As if catching Kyle's train of thought, Bia's voice turned sarcastic. "Go ahead, say that Haley would bring us to you. He can't even sense your presence. Did you forget you're wearing an artifact?" But what? You can sense me, right? Bia hummed softly as if she contemplating his words. "Ah, right, I can, so what do you want to say?" Kyle let out a sigh. The fact that Haley could not sense him due to the artifact slipped out of his mind. He gazed at the execution platform when Emion announced that the most powerful among the captured outsiders would be executed in the end. That's why, instead of Alec, a purple-haired dwarf was forcefully dragged to the center of the platform. The dwarf cried out in panic as the blade hovered above his neck. From Emion's pleased smile, it was evident he wanted to torment Alec by forcing him to witness everyone's death. "Bia, do me a favor, make sure to pluck every single strand of hair from Alec's head if something happened to me, okay? What? Where are you? Don't jump into any danger if you cannot handle it." Her words were cut short because Kyle blocked her voice. He gazed at the platform, and before the blade could drop onto the dwarf neck, he vanished from his spot. On the platform, Alec clenched his jaw as he watched the blade inch closer to the dwarf's neck with dilated eyes. But before the blade could touch the dwarf, a loud, pained cry echoed through the crowd. The blade froze in midair as everyone turned their heads towards the source of the cry. The crowd quickly parted, revealing a man writhing in pain. A bright blue spear jutted from his chest as he took his final breath in front of the shocked onlookers. Emion roared and flapped his wings to fly above the crowd. Which bastard did it? He couldn't believe someone dared to attack his people right before his eyes. However, no matter how hard he searched, the culprit seemed to have disappeared into thin air. In the end, he snapped at the crowd. "What are you all looking at? Go search the area around the platform. Hurry up, I want his head." The moment his words fell, the crowd scattered in many directions. However, the panic in their eyes was undeniable, because if even their leader couldn't track down the enemy, it meant the enemy was likely stronger than Emion. Alec snickered at Emion back loudly with cold eyes. The latter was flying just mere inches away from him, that's why he heard it loud and clear. Anger welled up inside Emion's heart as he snapped his head back to crush the insolent human completely, but he froze in his tracks when he saw a familiar figure tiptoeing toward the captured outsiders. Just like Emion, Kyle stopped in his spot. He so much wanted to strangle the blue-haired youth sitting mere inches away from him. However, he controlled the urge and stared back at Emion with a blank expression. "Oh, hi," Kyle's sentence drifted in the air as he vanished from the platform, narrowly evading Emion's sharp nails that tore through the space where he was standing a while ago. Emion let out a loud, angry cry because after Kyle vanished, he again could not locate him. He snapped his eyes toward Alec and the people sitting around him. "That bastard wanted to save you, right? So if I kill some, he would show up for sure." Alec and Carcel both glanced at each other with bewilderment. They only caught a glimpse of the person who vanished in front of their eyes, but from the bright silver hair, they were sure it was Kyle. Carcel groaned. The strange brown rope on everyone's wrists made it impossible for them to freely move their bodies. Amidst all this, just like Kyle, he so badly wanted to punch Alec. If only he stayed quiet for a second. We were so close to freedom." Chapter 307, I wanted to save someone. Kyle appeared behind a wall and released a huge breath. He heard Emion's loud words and vanished from his spot again. Due to Emion's angry cry, a lot of people from the dark race returned and surrounded the platform with vigilant eyes. Emion extended his nails to tear the dwarf who was nearest to him, but before he could touch the dwarf, cold blue flames surged around him. Surprised, he waved his hand to extinguish the flames with his pressure, but instead of stopping, the flames shone with intensity and covered the platform completely. However, strangely enough, the flames did not touch Alec or the other captive. The flying people from the dark race jumped to stop the flames with their attacks, but they were stunned because the flames engulfed every attack and turned it into glistening ice. Alec watched the surging flames with bated breath. He couldn't help but question himself. Was the one using the flames really Kyle? Suddenly, he felt a cold tug on his wrists. The moment he looked back, a pair of bright green eyes stared back at him in exasperation. A curse slipped out of his mouth when Kyle ripped the rope from his wrists forcefully. He wanted to speak, but Kyle spoke first. "Help others and run. I am going to leave the moment my mana is down." Alec opened his mouth, but Kyle's figure vanished right before his eyes. He rubbed his wrists and swiftly untied the rope from Carcel's wrists. The duo looked at each other and hurriedly went to untie the others. They did not have their weapons and their mana was low, so fighting was out of the question. A frustrated cry slipped out of Emion's throat as he flapped his wings roughly to disperse the surging flames. The flames tried to penetrate his skin, but they failed miserably when a heavy current enclosed him from head to toe. Unlike Emion, the other flying individuals from the dark race were too flustered to touch the flames. Their vigilant behavior made it easier for Alec and Carcel to untie everyone smoothly. Emion glared at his people with bloodied eyes. "Stop staring, you idiots, and grab them. If they escape today, I am going to punish you all." Regardless, he flapped his wings angrily and a large black vortex formed behind him. His eyes traveled around the platform to find the silver-haired human. "You bastard, if I cannot find you, I will just crush everything completely." True to his words, the vortex spun violently and extended in size repeatedly. Dark, ominous current crackled around it as it soared above the platform, ready to engulf everything. The flying people around Emion cried out in panic when they saw the vortex. They could not believe the weak ants forced their leader to use his strongest skill. Instantly, they escaped to save their lives. A crazy laughter spilled out from Emion's mouth as he clenched his fists. Die! As soon as his words fell, the vortex moved, but suddenly a figure materialized in the air. Kyle ran his hand through his hair and cocked a finger at his face. What scared? Emion's forehead throbbed as blood rushed to his head. He waved his hand and the moving vortex changed its direction toward Kyle. You insolent, just die, Kyle frowned. He wanted to vanish, but Alec and the others were not that far from the platform. He knew if he disappeared now, Emion would throw the vortex at them. That's why instead of teleporting away, he curled his fingers around his sword and gazed at Emion with bated breath. In the next second, a loud sound of metal hitting metal rang out in the platform as Emion stopped Kyle's sword with his pointy nails. Emion raised his brow, shocked because the strength of Kyle's attack was too weak. You, he stuttered due to the intense humiliation he felt in his chest. The human was clearly so much weaker. How the hell did he dare to attack him head-on? Kyle's eyes widened when Emion easily snatched his sword and pushed him toward the vortex. He cursed under his breath and vanished from his spot. Countless ice spears formed around him as he appeared behind Emion. Give me back my weapon. Emion snapped back, but he staggered backward when countless ice spears zoomed toward him with lightning-fast speed. He flapped his wings to destroy the ice spears. However, at that moment, a barrage of thunder arrows poured down from the sky straight on his head. What? His grip on the sword faltered as he moved his hands to stop the arrows. The sword dropped to the ground with a loud click. Kyle vanished from his spot and picked it up immediately. With a sigh, he gazed at the vortex and chuckled coldly. Let's see if you can confront the vortex you created. He appeared in front of Emion and kicked his chest with all the strength he could muster. The man staggered due to the sudden attack and Kyle punched his face with a cold expression. A cry slipped out from Emion's mouth and the sudden force sent him a few meters back. Kyle clicked his tongue. Just a little more and he would have been engulfed by the vortex. Before Emion could snap at him, he vanished from his spot. Kyle hissed when he appeared in the air. He waved his hand. The punch he delivered to Emion's face almost broke his bones. He gazed down at the running figures and followed behind them in midair. Beneath him, Alec and others jumped and dodged an attack coming from behind. Kyle waved his hand and a familiar blue spear appeared in his hand. Good thing I picked it up on time. He raised the spear above his head and threw it at one of the winged men flying behind Alec. The man cried out in pain as Kyle dived down toward Alec. He couldn't help but ask when his flying figure appeared beside Alec. Hey, tell me, how did you offend Emion? Alec gazed at him with bated breath. Wanted to save someone, Kyle glanced at Carcel. What about you? Carcel rolled in another direction with a curse. I wanted to save the one who wanted to save someone else. Chapter 308, that was a nice attack. Kyle raised an eyebrow with an O and didn't ask any more questions. He quickly connected the dots in his mind and figured out what had happened. Most probably, Alec tried to help someone, but it turned out that the person he was up against was none other than Emion. That's why he lost and ended up infuriating the latter. And while Alec was being dragged around by Emion, Carcel happened to see him and tried to help, but unfortunately got captured as well. Kyle raised his head to gaze at the sky when he heard Emion's furious roar. The man was truly angry because even from such a distance, Kyle could see the thick dark veins bulging all around his head and neck. With a sigh, Kyle held out his fingers toward Alec. I can only stop him for 5 more minutes. Alec shot him a nod because 5 minutes were more than enough. Instantly, he jumped and bent down to dodge an attack from one of the angry winged men following behind them. He raised his voice and waved his hand toward Carcel and the people running around him. Everyone scatter. Immediately, everyone scattered in different directions. Kyle retrieved the blue spear and held it above his head. His loud voice reverberated behind everyone as he vanished from his spot to engage with Emion. Carcel grab! Sweat rolled down from Carcel's forehead as he glanced at the plain spear hurled toward him. His eyes narrowed and with a big leap he snatched the spear out of the air. Strangely, the cold surface of the spear warmed up his palm. Carcel halted in his tracks and twirled the spear in his hand. Not bad at all. He gazed at the man flying behind him and lunged at him with a smirk. The spear in his hand moved with a rhythm as he thrust it forward. The wings behind the man fluttered frantically as he tried to evade the attack, but under his shocked eyes, the ordinary-looking spear tore through the air with lightning-fast speed. Carcel twisted the spear's body and stabbed the arrowhead directly in the man's stomach. A pained cry slipped out from the man's mouth as he lost his balance and plummeted toward the ground. In the distance, Alec rolled down to grab a fistful of sand. He tossed it back at the person flying behind him. The man flapped his wings and waved his hands to repel the sand, but suddenly a heavy object fell on his head. Due to the sudden impact, he staggered midair with a cry. The man rubbed his head and snapped back with bloody eyes to glare at the purple-haired dwarf who attacked him with a heavy rock. "How dare yo!" His sentence was cut short because Alec grabbed a pointy rock and stabbed it in his chest. The man's eyes dilated in pain and he extended his nails, ready to tear the human apart. However, before he could make a move, Alec snickered and delivered a powerful kick to his abdomen. The man's body plummeted down, and the moment he dropped to the ground, another heavy rock was thrown on his head. Alec gazed at the dwarf with a nod. Instantly, the duo ran in the opposite direction because more and more people from the dark race were gathering in the air. At the same time in the sky, Kyle vanished from one spot to another to avoid Emian's ruthless attacks. A bright glint flashed inside Kyle's eyes and he vanished from his spot. Instantly, Emian snapped his head back and clawed the air around him because he was sure the human would appear behind him. An evil smirk spread across Kyle's face when he appeared above his head. He rummaged in his mind space for a heavy object, but the only heavy thing he had in his mind space was a gigantic throne he stole. He borrowed from the Tower of Opportunity. Kyle hesitated for a second when he thought about the hundreds of glistening gems adorned around the throne. Still, he dropped the throne on Emian's head with a regretful sigh. "I need to stock some heavy boulders." Emian twisted his head up, but it was too late. With only half a second to spare, he hastily constructed a shaky shield above his head as the heavy throne descended with lightning-fast speed. However, the shield cracked under the immense weight and shattered into countless pieces. A muffled cry slipped out from his mouth when the throne crashed onto his head with a deafening bang. Kyle's lips trickled upward into a barely visible smile when Emian danced around in the air and rubbed his bloodied head. Regardless, he vanished behind his throne and grabbed it before it could plummet to the ground and shatter into many tiny pieces. Kyle sighed with relief and hurriedly tossed the throne in his mind space. However, the moment he raised his head, he was met with a speechless, twitching pair of eyes. Carcel threw the dead body in his hand away and gazed at Kyle with a blank expression. Inwardly, he swore he would never get on the latter bad side. That was a nice attack. Kyle was not sure if it was a compliment or insult, but he accepted it as a compliment and thanked the golden-haired youth with a nod. "Why are you still here? Leave, my mana is down, I am going to vanish after 30 seconds. Carcel raised the blue spear with a nod. "I am borrowing this until I find the one I lost." Before Kyle could answer, Carcel crushed the tiny round bead in his ear. His figure blurred and a bright light flashed around him. In the next second he disappeared into thin air. Kyle blinked. He scratched his head with a sigh. Just how on earth did he forget about Carcel's status? There's no way the king would allow his son to enter such a dangerous place without some kind of life-saving artifact. He shook his head with a smile. So he endured so much because of Alec. Kyle glanced at Emian and vanished from his spot. He appeared in the distance, and his eyes roamed around to see the situation beneath him. Almost everyone had gone quite far. He nodded and grabbed his sword tightly. "Just one more attack. Then I will leave as well." With a determined expression, Kyle was ready to attack Emian one last time, but suddenly the air around him trembled and a loud, unpleasant roar tore through the air. He looked up and his eyes widened slightly. In the distance, Emian's whole body was enveloped by dark clouds, suspended in midair. Countless ominous snakes slithered out from the murky clouds, crackling with electricity. The sky above his head turned pitch black and a swirling vortex formed behind him. The violent currents and winds tore everything in their path, and the black vortex greedily swallowed the scattered pieces into pitch-black darkness. Kyle watched as the vortex devoured everything, showing no distinction between friend and foe. He hastily tossed his sword in his mind space when Emian snapped his bloody eyes toward him. With a blank expression, Kyle gave him a curt nod and vanished from his spot. "I believe I shall leave now." Emian roared angrily behind him. The vortex and the murky clouds surged forward toward the place Kyle was standing a while ago. However, the intended target had already vanished into thin air. "Ah, you bastard, I will kill you. I will cut you into thousands of pieces and feed your flesh to the monsters." Inside a medium-sized building, Kyle grabbed his ears as he peeked through the window to glance up at the crazy man. "Damn, his voice is too unpleasant." He let out a large breath and vanished from his spot again. Now, staying in the dark race base was not safe. Still, he knew he could not leave Emian alone because if he did, the latter would just kill every outsider that appeared in his path. That's why instead of leaving the base, Kyle activated his skill Scent Perception for a few seconds. "I should check around for a while. After all, I need compensation for the gems I sacrificed on his head." With a nod, he carefully passed through the numerous buildings scattered within the dark race base, heading straight toward the only place where he sensed a pleasant scent. Kyle noticed with narrowed eyes the interior of each building was basically the same, square rooms and simple sets of furniture. The dark race is quite poor. Kyle let out a sigh and shook his head with pity. While he was engrossed in his search, the air outside calmed down and Emion closed his eyes to suck in a sharp breath. His fists were trembling because all the captured outsiders escaped under his nose. He couldn't help but engrave the silver-haired human face in his head. "I will find you, just wait." He gritted his teeth so hard that blood oozed out from his mouth. With another sharp breath, he flapped his wings and left the area because he suffered a few internal injuries in the middle of his frenzy. However, he swore the moment he recovered he would go out for a mad hunt and kill every outsider he encountered mercilessly. Chapter 309, The Dark Race is Truly Poor. Kyle stopped in front of a medium-sized building. He narrowed his eyes with skepticism at the ordinary-looking door. Still, he entered the building through a window because he was sure he sensed something good in this place. Just like the other buildings, the interior was rather simple. Slowly, he explored the building by going from room to room, checking behind furniture and opening doors. Strangely, no one from the dark race was present in the building. As he searched, his eyes scanned the walls for any signs of hidden passages or secret compartments, and that's when he noticed a simple stone bookshelf. However, it was empty. Kyle blinked with a raised brow. If they don't have books, why did they place it here? With a grin, he pushed the stone shelf away from the wall. It was heavy, but the weight was nothing in front of the delicious smell of treasures. His grin widened when a narrow stairway emerged from behind the shelf, leading down into darkness. With a mix of excitement and caution, Kyle descended into the stairway until he reached a wide underground room. However, the sight he saw was vastly different from the one he imagined. The room was mostly empty, except for a few old plants and herbs that were messily scattered on the ground. In the distance, he saw a table and gingerly walked past the scattered plants. Kyle's eyebrow twitched when he arrived in front of the table. A few bloodied weapons and some storage rings were all that were strewn across the table's surface. He sighed and massaged his temples because the weapons and rings belonged to Alec and the people who escaped a while ago. What did I even expect? The dark race is truly poor. Regardless, he activated his skill scent perception to check if the room really had nothing of value. Instantly, his nose was blasted with hundreds of unpleasant scents oozing out from the dead plants and the surrounding walls. Yet, amidst so many scents, he sensed it clearly when a calm and soothing smell flickered around him. Kyle moved his head to glance at the few weapons placed above the table. He picked up the simple-looking sword and narrowed his eyes. Alec's sword? I thought it was just an ordinary weapon, but the smell coming from it is saying otherwise. He tilted his head and swung the blade around him. A humming sound echoed in the room as he ran his fingers along the smooth silver surface. It's good, but it's not mine. What a pity. He shook his head and tossed everything present on the table inside his mind space. However, he made a mental note to return the items if he encountered their owners. After all, due to the dark race presence, the ancient realm was very dangerous. Anyway, since I only know Alec and Carcel, I should just dump everything on them. Kyle roamed inside the room, but in the end found nothing of value. He dejectedly left the building and aimlessly wandered inside the base. He was so carefree that if anyone saw him, they would think he was walking in front of his house. In the middle of his walk, he even killed a few members of the dark race as if they were the ones intruding on his territory. After a few hours, he let out a tired yawn. There was this weird feeling in the back of his mind that he was forgetting something really, really important, but he just shrugged it off because he was too tired. Kyle looked around and decided to enter the nearest building. To his surprise, he discovered an empty bed in one of the rooms. Though the bed was firm, it was better than rocks and trees. He drew a protective array in the room and retrieved a blanket from his mind space to get some sleep. A loud sound reverberated in the middle of the vast field. Bia narrowed her eyes dangerously at the tiny, innocent insects crawling below her huge body. "You bastard, how dare you cut off my voice?" Her wings fluttered with crimson flames and countless fireballs appeared around her. With a single flap, she tossed the fireballs down at the insects. The surrounding air grew scorching hot as the raging flames intensified, growing larger and more ferocious with each passing second. In the distance, Nine and Giant both simultaneously peeked out from behind Haley's huge body. They wiped their sweaty foreheads when they saw Bia's towering figure. Nine let out a chuckle. Before, when Kyle was around, he endured bone-chilling cold, and now with Bia's presence, he had to endure intense heat. He tapped Giant's shoulder with a hardened expression. "Why do you think she is so angry?" Giant narrowed his eyes in contemplation. "Maybe she is missing Kyle," Nine nodded in agreement. The duo had only met a few days ago, but to their surprise, they instantly clicked, as if they were long-lost friends. Haley's eyebrow twitched when he heard the two boys clinging to his body. He so badly wanted to throw them away, but he paused for the sake of the rules. Unlike the two curious heads peeking out from behind Haley, Rowan and the girls were training in the distance. Due to Haley's presence, the insects did not bother them that much. That's why they were able to easily pass their time in the castle. After using up all her mana, Bia let out a huff and silently landed next to Haley. The boar acknowledged her with a nod when he sensed the powerful aura around her body. Good job, if you keep it up you might just have another breakthrough. Bia closed her eyes. Just as Kyle had guessed, she recently reached B rank. However, despite feeling drained, she couldn't help but be angry at him. It had been a whole day without any news from Kyle. If she couldn't sense that he was alright, she would have thought he had perished out there. Bia, are you hungry? A familiar, sweet voice floated through the air, instantly diverting Bia's attention from Kyle. She shrank in size and pounced on Yue with a blissful expression. Yes, it's food time. Chapter 310. Hot spring. Kyle opened his eyes after a few hours and stretched his body, feeling refreshed. After gathering his blanket, he walked out of the building, not from the window but from the front door. For some reason, the atmosphere outside was eerily quiet. He couldn't help but look up when he noticed shadows casting upon his figure. The moment he raised his head, he was greeted with the sight of countless people from the dark race gathered in the air. Emian clasped his hands behind his back and gazed at the rows of flying figures in front of him. Then he started a speech midair as to how the outsiders had humiliated them blatantly and how he wanted a certain silver-haired human head. He even promised generous rewards to those who could locate the escaped individuals. Kyle narrowed his eyes. He had to suppress a groan because the bounty on the silver-haired human was almost 10 times greater than all others. I believe I am certainly not the person he is looking for. He silently kept an eye on the sky. After a long speech, Emian and the people around him all roared. Together they flew out from the base. As soon as they crossed the boundary, they split up into multiple teams of 2 and went off in different directions. Kyle massaged his temples. It was true, due to his recent actions, Emian forgot about the divine essence, but the situation right now was even more dangerous than before. He pinched his brows and decided to follow behind Emian because he was the strongest. But as he approached the base walls, he noticed a peculiar round dome tucked away in a secret corner, surrounded by rows of blades. What's that? Curious, Kyle went closer to the dome, but to his surprise, 4 muscular winged men were guiding the dome. He raised his brow. Almost everyone went out to capture the escaped individuals, so why did Emian leave someone to guard the dome? Doesn't that mean there was something special in the dome? However, even when he used the skill of scent perception, he sensed nothing from the dome. He narrowed his eyes and vanished from his spot. In the next second, a muffled cry slipped out from one of the guards' mouths when Kyle grabbed his mouth from behind and twisted his neck. He tossed the body away and took care of the other 3 guards. After checking the place one last time, he roamed around the dome and found a door. It was shut tightly with a big lock. Kyle chuckled and wisps of blue flames appeared around his fingers. He gingerly touched the lock and the flames danced around the metal eagerly. He flicked the lock and it turned into bright particles that drifted in the air. With a smile, Kyle kicked the door open. A loud sound rang out in the air, yet no one was around to check on the culprit. He briskly walked in the dome and his eyes widened with glee only after a few steps. Nestled among the countless scattered glowing mana stones, there was a round hot spring. The water of the spring was shimmering with a mesmerizing glow. Wisps of steam rose from the water, carrying with them a soothing aroma of flowers and earth. Did the dark race dig it out? It's a natural hot spring. Kyle removed his shoe and dipped his toe into the warm, inviting water. He grimaced because the water temperature was hot, very different from his own. He sensed the air around him and noticed the dense mana filling the atmosphere. Kyle sucked in a deep breath because he detected a faint, revolting scent mingling with the aroma of the hot spring. Someone from the dark race used this spring. But the scent doesn't belong to Emian, so who used it? Someone with a stronger status than him. Kyle gazed up at the dome ceiling as he recalled Haley's last words. Ah, don't tell me it's Gil, he smirked coldly. Gil was probably busy fighting with the Guardian, so it would be a pity if he left such a good place alone. I should make the most of it while it's still beneficial for my body. It's a shame I don't have anything to store the water. Anyway, I will just freeze everything before I go. Kyle discarded his clothes and jumped into the spring with a splash, immersing himself in the refreshing water. The warm droplets caressed his skin, rejuvenating his senses. If I stayed in this place for a day, I believe I can step into the next rank. A sense of tranquility washed over his body, melting away his stress and worries. While he was enjoying the hot spring, the people from the dark race roamed inside the secret realm, searching for the outsiders and the silver-haired human. Yet, for some strange reasons, they were unable to find a lot of targets. Moreover, to make matters worse, the outsiders were gathered together into big teams, which is why even when the dark race found them, they were unable to harm anyone. Instead, they were beaten up badly. In front of the dark race base, Alec gazed at the sky and rubbed his nose. He was still lurking around because how could he leave without his precious sword? That's why he waited until the dark race people were gone. After securing the surroundings, he jumped inside the towering walls silently. Slowly, his feet landed on his ground, just mere inches away from the sharp blades placed in front of the walls. Alec rubbed his hands and gazed at the many buildings in front of him. It's going to take a while if I want to search every single building. Just like him, a few more individuals were also lurking around the base in the hope of finding their lost belongings. Alec almost freaked out when two more people landed beside him. He grasped his chest and groaned at Carcel and the purple-haired dwarf. At least inform me before jumping. Carcel nodded and pointed the blue spear in his hand on the left side. I will go check in that direction. The dwarf pointed his hand in the right direction. In the end, Alec dragged his body to search the buildings in the front. After all, the more the better. However, even after a long day, they were unable to find their weapons and storage rings. In the end, they thought dejectedly, maybe Emion took everything with him. Chapter 311. What a beautiful reunion. When Kyle opened his eyes, a powerful and cold aura spread out in the dome. His eyes gleamed with bright light. Cold air escaped his mouth, forming a trail of glistening ice throughout his body. The once hot spring was now icy cold, perhaps due to his temperature affecting the water. He clenched his fist with a hum and waved his hand. At first, he thought the hot spring would help him break through to the next rank, but how wrong he was. Even after soaking in the water for a day, his rank did not increase. Instead, the spring increased his mana. Kyle gazed at his stats from the corner of his eyes and let out a chuckle. Stats: Name, Kyle Bloodline, Celestial Rank, S Strength. S Mana, S plus Agility, S Talent, SSS plus Rank Luck, Skills. I thought increasing mana stat is harder than the others, but look at it, it's the highest, almost on the verge of SS rank. He left the spring and changed into a fresh set of blue-colored clothes. Kyle gazed back at the water, and suddenly blue flames burst out inside the dome. They enclosed everything in a cold embrace, and when the flames vanished, the water, mana stones, and everything else in his sight turned into ice. He left the dome, and behind him, the ice transformed into bright particles and vanished into thin air. After gaining so much, he was in a pretty good mood. He stretched his body and activated his skill Scent Perception to track Emion. After all, he was eager to test his new strength on a good subject, but the moment his skill expended, he sensed some familiar auras nearby. Kyle whipped his head toward the buildings. Why are they still here? Instantly, his feet left the ground and he flew across the sky to see the surroundings better. And there they were, Alec and Carcel, with a few unfamiliar faces. The look on their faces was kind of dejected as they slowly made their way toward the towering walls. Kyle blinked and vanished from his spot. His floating figure appeared in front of the group. However, the moment he appeared, all of them jumped back in fright. Alec clenched his chest. He thought they got caught and barely stopped himself from activating his most powerful skill to take down the enemy in one swift move. He glared at Kyle with a stern expression. At least make a noise. Why the hell is your arrival so silent? Kyle raised his brow with mirth. He folded his arms on his chest and nodded with a thoughtful expression. I will think about it. Alec pointed his trembling finger toward him with a speechless expression, but no words came out of his mouth. In the end, he massaged his temples and simply ignored him. With a hum, he started walking towards the base walls, because even after searching around for a day, he was not able to find his sword or anything useful. That's why he was a little bitter. Kyle blinked and gazed at him. Was he just ignored? He clicked his tongue and followed behind him midair. Carcel chuckled at them and shook his head. He gazed at Kyle from head to toe. It was unbelievable how someone could change so much in a short time. Thanks for the help previously. Also, what happened to your hair and eyes? Alec's ears perked up. Not just him, the purple-haired dwarf and the other individuals around them also raised their eyes toward Kyle curiously. They all wanted to know the story of such a strong person, but the answer they got was far from the one they expected. Kyle grabbed his hair with his fingers. A serious expression graced his features. It was as if he was going to spill a big secret. It's just happened. I fell asleep for a while, and when I woke up, my hair and eyes color was like this. Moreover, my strength also increased. So I believe a lot of sleep is essential for. His sentence was cut off when Carcel raised his hand with a twitching brow. Stop, I think it's better if I don't know. Unlike Carcel and Alec, the others were still curious about Kyle. However, since they didn't know Kyle personally, they simply thanked him for his help. Suddenly, while following behind them, Kyle remembered the storage rings and the weapons he found in the underground room. Oh right, due to his loud exclamation, a few heads snapped back to gaze at him. Some of them thought maybe he was going to share the secret of his strength. Kyle rummaged inside his mind space, and in the next second a few weapons dropped in front of him. Your storage rings and weapons, I found them while looking around the base. Kyle raised his brow when everyone's expression turned blank. What happened? No one answered because they were not sure about their feelings. Should they thank him for finding their lost weapons, or should they beat him up? After all, no one would be happy to search a huge base only to find out that someone had already taken what they were looking for. Regardless, they did not dare to step forward because Kyle was the strongest. Contrary to the quiet atmosphere, Alec and Carcel gazed at each other. They rolled their sleeves with smiles that did not reach their eyes. Alec picked up his sword and traced its blade. Let me tell you what happened. The duo was ready to pounce at him, but suddenly an angry cry rang out in the air. All the heads snapped up. Their eyes widened with astonishment when trails of crimson flames flickered above their heads. In the next second, a huge shadow was cast upon their figures, and a large, majestic fire phoenix appeared in the sky. Bia gazed down at the tiny figures. Her bright eyes met Kyle's midair. Strangely enough, he started sweating buckets of water because he finally remembered the important thing he forgot a while ago. Kyle raised his hand slowly and waved with a dry laugh. Oh hi! With a large flap, Bia dived down toward him with lightning-fast speed. The flames around her body spread out in a mesmerizing manner in the sky. Alec and Carcel grabbed their weapons and immediately ran away from Kyle. For some reason, they could feel the dangerous aura around Bia. She was definitely angry. Kyle groaned and vanished from his spot before she could crash into him. He wiped his sweaty forehead and gazed at Bia's figure. Wait, I can explain. However, before he could complete his sentence, Bia changed her direction to follow behind him in the air. The moment Kyle removed the restriction from their connection, she cursed out loudly with an evil laughter. Haha, I finally found you. Let's settle all scores today. In the distance, Haley gazed at the phoenix and human with a twitching brow. He couldn't believe the two of them were fighting above the enemy base. What had the world turned into? Beside him, Giant, Nine, Yue, Ellie, and Rowan were floating inside white bubbles. He gently pushed the bubbles away, and all of them landed on the ground safely. Nine and Giant gazed at the two figures chasing each other in the sky, and they burst into loud laughter. Giant wiped his eyes with his fingers. What a beautiful reunion, Nine nodded with a chuckle. Indeed, it's so touching that I feel like laughing. He whipped his head back when he sensed a movement. His eyes widened slightly when he saw some familiar faces among the individuals standing behind him. Carcel and Alec. Carcel eyed him from head to toe, and a relieved sigh escaped his lips. The last time he saw Nine, the latter was so pale that it looked like he would die any second. But now he looked perfectly fine. With a smile, he raised his hand for a handshake, but Nine smacked his hand away and hugged him with a laugh. How have you been? It's been a while. Nine's gaze wandered toward Alec. For a few seconds, he was a little awkward because the last time they met he said some unnecessary things to the latter. Still, he walked up to Alec with a smile and hugged him as well. What about you? Alec tapped his back and returned the hug with a bright smile. He was worried after Nine's last outburst, but it seems Nine has sorted out his emotions. I am fine, but... He dragged his words and pointed at the sky. What happened to Bia? Nine shook his head and threw his arm on his shoulder with a grim look. It's because she missed him a lot, Giant nodded. He walked toward the duo and placed his arm on Alec's empty shoulder. Everyone watched with different expressions as Kyle vanished from one spot to another in the sky, desperately trying to calm his bonded beast. In the distance, Haley's gaze wandered between the onlookers and Kyle. Perhaps he was the only one concerned about the fact that they were in the enemy base. Chapter 312. The sooner the better. Bia's breathing turned ragged, but she was not even able to land a single attack on Kyle. It was very infuriating. Kyle chuckled at her expression and shook his head. He raised his hand and tapped his shoulder with a smile. Come here. Contrary to the onlookers' expectations, after Kyle's gesture, the furious phoenix decreased her size and climbed his shoulder obediently. Kyle grabbed the little phoenix and gazed at her from all directions with a grin. B rank, not bad, you did a good job. Bia harumphed and rolled her eyes. How she wished to beat him a little, but the difference in their strength was just too much. I am not lazy like you, okay? Also, I haven't forgiven you yet. Kyle placed the grumpy little phoenix on his shoulder and looked down at the small crowd below him. The moment his eyes traveled down, for some reason everyone looked away in different directions. He raised his eyebrow. They were probably enjoying the view earlier, but now they were pretending as if they hadn't seen a thing. With narrowed eyes, Kyle dived down and landed in front of the crowd. His gaze traveled from Nine to Giant. Oh, they had gotten stronger. Finally, his eyes stopped on Yue. She was standing behind everyone else with Xia. He couldn't help but blink with surprise. The aura around her was quite violent, very different from the one he remembered. Also, how did she jump from C rank to C+ rank in such a short time? A barely visible frown appeared between his brows. Alec, Nine, Giant, and Carcel approached him to ask about what he was going to do next. However, his mind was occupied in another place. Bia, what happened to Yue? Bia hummed softly. She made herself comfortable on his shoulder and gazed at Yue with thoughtful eyes. I don't know. She paused for a few seconds and recalled the time when she was alone with Yue. I am not sure, but I think her body is a little special. Special? How should I describe it? It's like she can consume a lot of things without any consequences. Things, you mean food? No, not food. She can absorb the aura around the treasures without directly eating or wielding them, but I believe she can't absorb a large amount at once. Her rank jumped from C rank to C plus rank after we stepped into the treasure room. Kyle's frown deepened. Did it harm her body? I don't think so, or else I would have noticed. Suddenly, Nine glanced at Kyle's face. He narrowed his eyes because Kyle was not focused at all. That's why he stopped and lightly smacked his back. Kyle hissed and glared at him. What was that for? Nine raised his brow. Are you even listening? Kyle's expression hardened as he noticed Alec Giant and Carcel's eyes on him. Of course I am. Nine rolled his sleeves with a nod. And what did you hear? Cannot care to explain. Kyle was thick-skinned. Even though he did not hear what they were talking about, he replied confidently. Of course, you are talking about how we should take care of the dark race. Instantly, everyone looked at him with speechless eyes. They were clearly talking about what they were going to do next. Where the hell did the dark race come from? However, before they could plummet his confidence, Kyle wore a grim expression and gazed into the distance. I can sense Emion, he is quite far. How about we take out all the weaker people from the dark race? If everyone worked in teams, I believe we can do it. His suggestion immediately diverted everyone's attention. It was indeed possible. However, the problem was, what if Emion caught them while they were hunting his people? Among the dark race, Emion was the most formidable. If they could somehow deal with him, then the rest would be manageable. As if noticing their worries, Kyle cracked his knuckles with a smile that did not reach his eyes. I will make sure Emion stays busy. Even though he is stronger than me, I believe I can attract his attention for a long time. Kyle almost tripped when Nine smacked him again with a laugh. He so badly wanted to return the smack but controlled the urge. Alec tightened his hold on his sword and pointed it toward the sky. Then, what are we waiting for? Let's go. All of them gathered together and split up into 3 big teams. Nine and Giant took charge of the first team, Alec led the second team, and Carcel became the head of the third team. Kyle nodded at Alec and the others with a serious expression before he held out his hand in front of Carcel. The young prince was confused as he gazed at his hand. What? The spear? Oh, Carcel grazed the tip of the ordinary-looking blue spear. It was actually better than his own. After a few seconds, instead of giving back the spear, he stared at Kyle with a polite smile. How about we trade? Kyle raised his brow and rubbed his hands, ready to rob the prince. However, his plan failed when Nine smacked him again with a chuckle. What's there to trade between friends, right, Kyle? Nine light golden eyes sparkled with mirth as he stared at him deeply. Kyle groaned and slapped his hand away. This time he returned the smack with double strength and replied with a hint of reluctance. Of course, you can take it for free, after all we are friends. The smile on Nine's face stiffened. Kyle's smack almost made him lose his balance. He rubbed his aching back with a pained expression and ran off to Ellie for comfort. Bullying Kyle was really hard. Alec glanced at Nine, who was rubbing his head on Ellie's shoulder. He let out a bittersweet smile and started walking. Behind him, Carcel and the others also began to move. Kyle jumped and flew across the sky. He followed behind the small crowd, and after a minute they reached the base borders, while everyone was jumping off the walls. Suddenly, Yue waved at him. She was on Nine and Giant's team. Albeit confused, Kyle dived down and landed in front of her. What happened? Her eyes fell on Kyle for a few seconds before she averted her gaze to look at Bia. Yue held out her hand and tapped Bia's head with a sweet smile. It's just, while we were in the field, Bia was pretty upset. I believe she was worried about you, so you should not leave her alone. Kyle stared at the beautiful hand caressing Bia's head. Subconsciously, his eye trailed off toward her face. They were standing too close, so close that he could faintly hear the sound of her breathing and heartbeat. For some reason, her heart rate was higher than normal. Maybe it was due to the violent aura around her body. Are you sure Bia was worried? Don't forget how she attacked me the moment she saw me. His sentence was cut off when Bia pecked on his shoulder with an angry hiss. I was worried, okay, do I need to spell it out for you? With a cold hum, she looked away from Kyle and leaned into Yue's hand for more comfortable pats. Yue let out a soft laugh at her actions. She slowly lifted her eyes to glance at Kyle, only to find out that he was staring directly at her. Her heart skipped a beat and she immediately stepped back to maintain the distance. Also, Bia is a very picky eater, please take care of her diet. Kyle whipped his head toward the little phoenix, the very same phoenix who could eat anything as long as it was edible. Picky eater. What the hell did you do? Bia blinked at him innocently. Recently I developed a tiny habit. I cannot eat if the food is not delicious enough. Also, I need 3 proper meals a day. Bia cried out in surprise when Kyle picked up her body and stared at Yue blankly. I believe it's better if you took this glutton with you. Yue let out a huff and wrapped her hands on her chest with a raised brow. Did you forget what I said? You should not leave her alone. She gets worried. Kyle sucked in a huge breath. How the hell was he going to feed this phoenix? He groaned and placed Bia back on his shoulder. Okay, you should leave. Everyone is. He dragged his sentence and narrowed his eyes to gaze at the heads peeking from behind the walls. Waiting, Yue replied with a nod and walked away. Her voice was barely a whisper, but Kyle heard it clearly. Goodbye, take care. He gazed at her back, and unlike Yue's faint voice, Kyle's voice was loud as he jumped off the ground to soar into the sky. Take care as well. In the distance, the few curious heads peeking from behind the wall immediately snapped back when Kyle stared at them. Jian narrowed his eyes and whispered to Nine and Alec. Bro, what were they talking about? Alec rubbed his nose with a curious expression. My question is, when did Kyle start speaking to girls so normally? Usually he is not even responsive toward Mia and Lara. A mischievous smile spread across Nine's face, but before he could make a comment, Kyle's figure appeared in front of the trio and they jumped back in fright. Nine cried out, at least make a noise. Kyle ignored his cry and gazed at the sky. I am leaving, you should go as well, the sooner we finish this the better. With a nod, the trio scattered in different directions with their team members. Kyle flew across the sky. He immediately activated his skill scent perception. Hundreds of different scents flooded his nose, but he only grasped on the familiar, revolting scent. It was coming from the west side. A little far, but we can reach him within a few hours. Chapter 313, Do Not Enter. Kyle's head peeked out from behind a huge boulder as he gazed at the familiar figure floating midair in the distance. Emian let out an angry laugh. He gazed at his surroundings and his harsh aura shook everything around him. It's been so many hours, but why is it that I haven't seen even a single outsider? His eyes dilated into narrow slits. He was so angry that blood rushed to his head. Kyle diverted his eyes with a frown. Just like Emian, he was equally confused because, on his way, he didn't see a single soul except for some people from the dark race. Secretly, he followed behind the frustrated man. They passed through a few treasure islands, mountains, and a large river, yet for some reason the air was eerily quiet. It was as if the humans, elves, demi-human, mer, and dwarfs all vanished into thin air, leaving behind no one except Emian and the few scattered people of dark race. Kyle let out a soft chuckle. At first, he planned to distract Emian by attacking him, but now with such a strange situation, he was not sure anymore. I don't think I need to distract someone who is already on the verge of madness. Bia yawned gingerly on his head. She was very comfortable. It was strange how Kyle's quiet and cold presence put her heart at ease. The fact that a fire phoenix prefers to stay with someone as cold as ice is astonishing, to say the least. After another hour, Emian roared into the air madly and crushed a nearby boulder into pieces. Kyle noticed with a raised brow. The sheer power of Emian's attack was at least 10 times stronger than his own. He couldn't help but wonder what would have happened if he had been on the receiving end. A chill ran down his spine as he shook his head with a dark face. Still, he thought deeply. Just where the hell did the people who entered the realm go? After all, there's no way the dark race can kill so many people within such a short amount of time. Moreover, he sensed distress etched on the faces of the dark race individuals he encountered on his way. It was clear that they were equally baffled. Whatever, it's better this way. With a sigh, he slowly followed behind Emian. They traveled for another hour toward the west before the wings behind the man fluttered roughly as he gazed at one of the treasure islands. The look on Emian's face was screaming desperately that if he did not find anyone outside, maybe everyone entered the treasure islands. Kyle raised a mischievous brow and a strange glint flashed through his eyes. Just because he couldn't defeat Emian didn't mean he couldn't torture him enough to make him wish for death. He rubbed his hands and Bia almost jumped off his head with fright when she heard his evil laughter. The heck? Why are you getting so scary? Immediately, she lit a candle for Emian in her heart. The man was not going to live long, what a pity. Kyle ignored her remarks and watched the man with utmost focus. As long as they entered the same treasure island, he was sure even if he did nothing, Emian was going to suffer a lot. Opposite him, Emian felt a chill run down his spine. The man glared back but found no one. In the end, he flapped his wings in midair to enter the treasure island. Kyle tiptoed behind him with an innocent look. After Emian entered the castle, Kyle slowly moved his finger to write on the castle gate. Caution. Do not enter. Bia's eyebrow twitched violently when she saw Kyle's satisfied face. What the hell are you doing? Just putting on a warning for those who might accidentally enter this castle. Without waiting for Bia's reply, Kyle jumped into the castle gate. The familiar darkness blurred his vision for a second before he finally opened his eyes in front of a big enclosed arena. He lifted his head to gaze at the massive structure with towering walls made of stone and marble. In the distance, 4 towering humanoid statues adorned the edges of the arena. Also, for some reason, the exterior was very old, older than the other treasure islands. Kyle's eyes fell on the figure standing in the middle of the arena. Emian managed to plant his feet firmly on the sandy floor as he battled against a large 2-horned black bull. Kyle let out a harsh breath when he focused and tried to pinpoint the latter rank. It was probably a lot higher than his expectations. After all, his attacks never had any effect on Emian. SS rank, no, it's a little higher. He shot Beer a look and gazed at the thin boundary in front of him. His eyes trailed off to the bright transparent dome around the arena and the towering bull before they finally stopped at the hovering white orb outside the dome. Kyle raised his hand and for the first time unclasped the white earring present in his ear. He stepped inside the boundary and the familiar mechanical voice echoed in the arena. Welcome new participants to the 104 Treasure Land. Counting the number of new arrivals. Total new arrivals 2. A B-rank divine beast and a S-rank human. Please do your best to clear the challenges in front of you. Emion snapped his head back abruptly in the middle of his fight. His eyes widened with fury when he saw Kyle's figure. He wanted to lunge at him, but the towering bull made it impossible for him to move. Kyle let out a chuckle and watched him from a distance. He folded his hands on his chest and his feet left the sandy ground. Bia hurriedly left his head because after staying with him for so long, she knew what he was going to do. Her tiny figure flew across the arena before she lazily stopped above a faraway statue. In the next second, 2 more similar bulls appeared out of thin air in the arena. The 2 bulls roared at Kyle and rubbed their hind limbs on the ground before charging toward him at full speed. However, Kyle did not even flinch. He met Emion's furious gaze midair, and the corner of his lips trickled upward into a smile before he vanished from his spot. Under Emion's dilated eyes, Kyle's figure appeared mere inches away from the white orb floating outside the dome. The winged man roared at him with bloody eyes. You dare! Kyle shrugged his shoulders with twinkling eyes. His wriggling fingers approached the bright orb as he watched the 2 bulls who were supposed to attack him and Bia. The bulls suddenly halted in their tracks when they lost their targets. At first, they gazed around in confusion, but the moment they heard Emion's thundering voice, the bulls snapped their glaring eyes at the shouting man. Emion's eyes widened with disbelief. He looked at the bulls. Now they were charging toward him with the same speed they went behind Kyle. You bastard! He punched the bull he was fighting and jumped in another direction to avoid the 2 other bulls. Kyle watched his struggle from above with glee. Suddenly he vanished from his spot and appeared inside the dome. Emion eyed his figure and the man shuddered when Kyle raised his hand and summoned countless ice spears that rained down at him with lightning-fast speed. Bia let out a hiss instead of Emion and turned her tiny head away. The sight was just too painful. Kyle's eyes zeroed in on the battered figure underneath him. He wanted to use his flames or ice domain, but the skills would probably affect the bulls as well. That's why he crossed his fingers and gazed at the sandy ground. Under Emion's wide eyes, 10 glowing fire skeletons crawled out from the land and jumped at him without any fear. The skeletons were weak, barely B-rank, but because the man was already surrounded by 3 towering bulls, he suffered a few injuries. Kyle clicked his tongue when Emion managed to kill the strongest bull and badly injured the second one with the vortex. Still, when the man managed to subdue the last bull, Kyle spread out his palm and mumbled under his breath, "Fire rain." It was not his strongest skill, but instantly a sea of fire descended inside the dome. Bia opened her eyes when she sensed the scorching heat. She flapped her wings and joined Kyle. After all, fire was her natural element. Oh, it's actually a little fun. Emion let out a cry. He was already tired after battling with the bulls and the skeletons. He flapped his wings and after struggling for a minute managed to extinguish the fire. When he was done, his body was burned in various places and countless injuries adorned his figure. Yet the boiling anger in his eyes did not dissipate as he lifted his bloody gaze to stare at Kyle, ready to tear the human into hundreds of shreds. However, the sight he saw made him cough out blood. Bia landed on Kyle's shoulder when the latter grabbed the white orb floating above the arena. The transparent dome had long vanished the moment Emion killed the last bull. Kyle rolled the orb in his hand, and a portal appeared behind his back. Before jumping into a portal, he flashed a smirk at Emion. Dark Race Leader, try to stay alive because I want to be the one to end you. Remember, we will meet again, hahaha. Emion's pupils dilated with rage. He couldn't believe that punny human was throwing the same words he said back at him. Amidst all this, both Kyle and Emion failed to notice the tiny white ball lurking around the arena. Haley wore a blank expression as he glanced at Emion's tattered condition and slowly followed behind Kyle. Just what had the world turned into? Now a S-rank kid can easily beat up a SS plus rank being. I wish Master was here to witness the countless uses of instant teleportation. Chapter 314. Climb up. A loud explosion rang out in the air as Kyle jumped out from a trembling portal. He balanced his body midair and wiped the blood flowing out from his nose and mouth. Tusk, did he actually go crazy? He glanced at the beautiful and delicate flower floating above his palm. The flower petals shimmered constantly like opals, shifting colors with a soft, gentle light as if it were breathing. Kyle's palm warmed up due to the soothing energy emanating from the flower. He groaned at the tingling sensation and tossed it inside his mind space. Behind him, the portal flared up with a loud crack and Bia rolled out with ragged breathing. She flapped her wings and hurriedly clung to his shoulder, gasping, "Run, run!" Kyle's head was ringing, but the moment he saw Bia, he sped up in the opposite direction. He thought killing Emian would be easy if only he tortured the latter inside the treasure island. But how wrong he was. The man was just too thick-skinned, even more so than him. Regardless, he let out a mocking laugh when he halted in the distance and gazed at the cracking portal. After all, he managed to snatch the treasure right under Emian's nose. Bia shuddered on his shoulder. Damn it, at least make a proper plan before infuriating someone stronger than you. Kyle tapped his chest with heavy breathing. Under his gaze, Emian's battered figure emerged from the portal. Bia freaked out at the blood-red eyes staring at her, and her grip on his shoulder tightened. Shit, I feel like he is on the verge of a mental breakdown. Emian pointed his trembling finger at Kyle. Crazed laughter spilled out from his throat, but the movement of his throat caused him pain. He couldn't believe that he, the strongest of them all, couldn't even catch a single pesky human. The humiliation he endured within just a single day was enough to make his ancestors come alive. No matter how much he tried, just like a slippery bug, the human would run away in time to avoid a fatal attack. Emian sucked in a deep breath to calm his nerves, but when he saw the amusement twinkling in Kyle's eyes, he lost it again. Bia cursed under her breath. She flapped her wings and flew across the sky. Kyle flashed another grin in Emian's direction and followed behind Bia. Emian wore a sword as he chased after them, but his eyes dilated when the human suddenly vanished from his spot. This was something he could not get used to no matter how desperately he tried. His wings fluttered behind his back as he spread out his senses to locate the human. The hair on his back stood up and he abruptly turned out to attack behind him. However, his attack disappeared into thin air. Kyle's figure slowly materialized just mere inches away from his shoulder. After using instant teleportation so many times, he discovered that if he used the skill 2 to 3 times in a row, he could create a faint illusion. Kyle's eyes narrowed at Emian's neck. He raised his sword with a sharp glint, ready to finish it once and for all. But before his blade could touch the latter neck, Emian's wings shot up to cover his head. A loud cry spilled out from the man's mouth when a large gash appeared on one of his wings. However, Kyle was also pushed back several meters due to the impact. Kyle clicked his tongue in distaste. Even after so much, the man's defense was so strong. Still, he had been giving his all to gradually drain Emian's mana. It's fine, we have a lot of time. Bia's eyes flickered as she circled above their heads. Hey. Kyle jumped back to avoid Emian's pointy nails and glanced at her from the corner of his eyes. What? I am hungry. Kyle dodged another attack midair and stared at her blankly. Bia averted her eyes with a dry laugh. She was ready for a good lecture as to how she should focus more on the life-and-death battle Kyle was facing instead of food. Yet his answer left her dumbfounded. How about we finish this and find something good? Bia's eyes sparkled. Really? Kyle rolled his eyes. Was he so cruel that she could not even believe his words? His grip on his sword tightened as he stared at Emian's panting figure. Yes, I am getting tired anyway. She gave him a quick nod before diving down. In an instant, a blazing sea of crimson flames erupted around her. Her mana was already depleted. That's why she just used the last bit to attract Emian's attention for a few seconds. The man raised his eyes and stared at her approaching figure. He held out his palm, but before he could attack, Bia's figure left the blazing sea of fire. She flapped her wings and turned in a different direction. I am done, Kyle hummed in his mind as he watched the sea of crimson flames dancing around Emian. Instantly, he poured every ounce of his mana into his sword. The blade buzzed in his hand and the air around him quivered violently. He held the sword with both of his hands because the mana was getting too aggressive. Emian roared loudly as he pushed away the crimson flames around him with a rough flap of his wings. His bloody eyes met Kyle's in midair and a wicked grin crept across his face. He knew that if the human did not rely on his teleportation skill and faced him head-on, the human wouldn't even be able to leave a scratch on him. With a wide grin, he sneered. Finally, he could tear the human apart. Kyle raised a brow with a cold smile. Getting impatient, huh? He mumbled under his breath, and Emian's eyes dilated when he raised his sword. Ethereal Voidbreaker slash. The air crackled with an ominous energy, and the once serene sky darkened as storm clouds gathered. Thunder rumbled through the clear sky, and then, in a breathtaking spectacle, a colossal mana sword materialized behind Kyle's back. Emian's eyes zeroed in on the faint sword behind Kyle. Shivers ran down his spine, and for the first time he was terrified of the puny human. He cried out in panic and flapped his wings desperately to fly in another direction. But it was too late. A huge rift of light and energy that obliterated anything in its path enclosed his body from all directions as the sword descended on him. His cries muffled into thin air as the light engulfed everything. Kyle's body was flung backward in midair. Bia cried out and dived down toward him as he slammed into a distant mountain with a resounding boom. She let out a shuddering breath at the huge hole plastered in the middle of the mountain. Kyle crawled out from the hole with bloodied clothes. His hands trembled, but he managed to gulp down 2 healing potions instantly. However, his expression darkened when he saw a tiny crack in the middle of his sword. He dragged his stiff body and lifted his head to look at the scenery in front of him. Immediately, Kyle sucked in a harsh breath. His eyes widened with astonishment. The once grassy and clear ground was scarred completely into rubble. The air was still heavy with a strange, eerie glow. Almost everything was destroyed. It's gotten more dangerous. I believe I should avoid using this move in a crowded place. His eyes roamed around to find the familiar figure, the one who caused him a lot of trouble. After a few seconds, his gaze stopped at the few broken bones scattered between the rubble and he let out a groan. Kyle rubbed his temples. His whole body was aching. Still, he poked the shocked phoenix flying beside him. It seems we are finally done. Bia did not even notice when she held her breath. She gazed at Kyle and released her breath. Are you all right? Kyle hummed. Not really. I don't think I can fight for a while. He let out a chuckle. Also, I am hungry. Bia rolled her eyes. The duo went silent for a while. They watched the burning sun for an hour before Kyle finally had some power to stand properly. Amidst all this, the first thing he did was to wipe the blood from his body and change out from his tattered clothes. Bia sighed when she saw his limping figure. Kyle frowned when she flapped her wings and left his shoulder. His frown deepened when Bia increased her size. He looked around with caution. What happened? Bia did not say anything. Instead, her figure landed in front of him. With a huge sigh, she lowered one of her wings. Climb up. It took Kyle a whole minute to process the meaning behind her words, and when he did, a wide smile spread across his face. Maybe getting badly injured once in a while was not bad at all. Chapter 315. Roles reversed. As Kyle rode on the back of Bia, his gaze lingered upon the mesmerizing floating islands that surrounded them. With a careless wave of his hand, he felt the soft feathers beneath his touch. Why do I feel like our roles are reversed? Kyle let out a chuckle. He truly liked the feeling of riding a beautiful and huge phoenix. Bia rolled her eyes, yet she did not dislike Kyle's thrilled and excited emotions. With a huff, she increased her speed. The cold air brushed past Kyle's face and he closed his eyes with a sigh. He was on the verge of sleeping on her comfortable back, but it was impossible when the said ride had become a glutton. With a groan, he tapped her neck and pointed his finger toward a mountain. Go there, I can sense some strong monsters. Bia shot him a nod and lowered her body above the mountain. Kyle glanced at her back one last time and jumped down on the carpet of grass with a sullen expression. Who knew when he would get another chance to ride her back? He shook his head and narrowed his eyes in the distance. Meanwhile, Bia decreased her size and circled above his head. The duo ventured up the mountain, and thanks to Kyle's scent perception skill, they stumbled upon a group of B-rank winged drakes only after a few minutes. These monsters had sleek and muscular bodies, covered in scales of vibrant green and fiery red. Their sharp claws and long serpentine tails added to their intimidating presence. Kyle did not have to do much to kill them. His fierce skill alone was enough to send the monsters into a frenzy. After he was done, the duo found a quiet corner and lit up a fire. Kyle evenly sliced a few pieces of meat and impaled the meat onto the sharp blade of his sword. His heart ached whenever he noticed the tiny crack in the middle of the shiny blade. Still, he knew there was nothing he could do about it except look around for a new weapon. As the flames danced and the delicious aroma filled the air, the duo enjoyed a peaceful meal. The only problem was Bia's ruthless remarks as to how the meat was not cooked properly. Kyle had to cut off her voice with a speechless expression. Why the hell are you eating so much if you don't even like it? He so badly wanted to say it out loud, but stopped himself for the sake of the amazing ride she had given him. After their meal, Kyle closed his eyes and leaned into a nearby boulder. Bia quietly climbed his shoulder when she noticed his even breathing. She kept an eye on their surroundings for a few hours until Kyle rubbed his eyes open. Strangely enough, his body was feeling refreshed as if he never got injured in the first place. He gazed at the bright sun that never set in the realm and stretched his body for a while. After Kyle was done, his eyes sparkled as he narrowed them at the floating islands around him. Now that the strongest enemy is down, I believe it's time for us to check this realm properly. Bia raised her brow. She understood very well the meaning behind his words. With a flap of her wings, she landed on his shoulder and closed her eyes. Do you not want to check on the others? Kyle hummed and continued exploring the mountain. They are strong. Also, we will kill if we encounter anyone from the dark race. He paused for a second with a deep expression. Do you have any idea where is Haley? I want to meet the guardian of this place. Bia moved her body on his shoulder with a frown. I don't know, he disappeared into thin air after I found you. Anyway, why do you want to see the guardian? Kyle's eyes narrowed into the distance when he sensed blood through his skill. He was sure the blood did not belong to a monster. I saw something interesting and now I have a lot of questions. Bia wanted to know more, but she was too sleepy, that's why she left it for later. Kyle left the mountain and started moving toward the scent of blood. Still, he stopped after every few minutes to pluck out every precious herb he sensed nearby. After an hour, he paused in front of a large structure filled with crawling insects. The structure was tucked beneath a towering and old tree trunk. Kyle gazed at the countless snail-like insects. They were sitting around an underground tunnel. Wisps of steam were drifting out from the tunnel mouth, and Kyle was sure the smell of blood was coming from the tunnel. He slowly stepped into the structure and tiptoed toward the tunnel quietly. It was better to not alert the insects because even though they were weak, they were just too many in numbers. However, his plan failed miserably when Bia cracked her eyes open with a yawn. She flapped her wings on his shoulder and a few round heads snapped in his direction. Kyle halted in his tracks and stared at the nearest pair of eyes. He let out a groan and immediately stopped himself from just tossing the little bird away. Bia froze on his shoulder. Her eyes darted around to assess their situation. Why are we standing in the middle of hundreds of hungry monsters? Ah, I wonder why. Kyle waved at the monster and kicked off his feet to fly when a few of them pounced at him. He clicked his tongue and gazed at the tunnel. Bia, go distract them, just kill them. He shot her a glare and blue flames erupted around his body. The flames surged in all directions, successfully clearly the path in front of them. A few of the bold monsters still dared to pounce at them but failed due to the bone-chilling coldness. Kyle hurriedly approached the tunnel and gazed inside. He kicked a nearby monster and dived inside the tunnel. Bia's body rolled off his shoulder, but he grabbed her before she could drop. Chapter 316. It's been a long time indeed. Kyle's eyes narrowed when he saw a stream of hot water cascading down in the distance. A wide underground space and a shimmering floating castle in the middle. Moreover, the air was filled with a heavy scent of blood. His feet touched the ground near the stream. He walked for a minute and came to a halt when he spotted a pale cyan-haired youth leaning against the stairway leading up to the gleaming castle. The individual's clothes were soaked in blood. Regardless, Kyle's eyes drifted off to the lifeless body lying in the distance. He noticed with a raised brow the body belonged to someone from the dark race. With a sigh, Kyle stepped closer to him. Are you all right? The youth's body jolted when he heard Kyle's voice. He shot his wary eyes up and clenched his bleeding chest. Who? Kyle sighed when the youth tried to reach for the double-edged sword placed a few inches away from him. Don't worry, I won't harm you. He dragged his sentence and grabbed a healing potion from his mind space. Here. Take it. The youth eyed the potion warily, but after a few seconds of hesitation took it with trembling hands. After all, he had no other choice. Kyle's eyes darted around. He sensed a few more scents around the cyan-haired youth. That's why he was a little confused as to why the boy was alone in such a bad condition. He waited until the youth gulped down the potion and finally, some colors returned to the latter face. Afterward, Kyle moved away and started climbing the stairway. Wait. Kyle stopped and gazed back at the person standing at the edge of the stairway. What? Thank you. With a quick nod, Kyle resumed his steps, but the boy followed behind him slowly. Still, Kyle did not pause in his tracks even when the latter started a conversation. I am Lucas. What's your name? I feel like I have seen you somewhere before. Kyle hummed and pushed the castle gate open. My name is Kyle. Also, I don't know you. Lucas hurriedly followed behind him and stopped by his side with wide eyes. Wait, are you the same Kyle I am thinking? I mean the one who had a majestic phoenix. Bia's ears perked up. She glanced at Lucas with a nod. Finally, someone who had enough brain. Of course, I am majestic. Kyle ignored her words and jumped into the castle gate. Lucas hurriedly followed behind him. The duo appeared in a large barren land surrounded by hundreds of doors. Lucas's face crumbled when he saw his old teammates standing in front of one of the doors. Kyle carelessly followed his gaze but froze the moment he eyed the two figures. Bia sensed his discomfort and narrowed her eyes. What happened? Kyle's brow knitted together and his eyes turned emotionless. Nothing. He turned around to enter the nearest door, but suddenly a female voice drifted into his ears. Who is there? Ignoring the voice, Kyle gripped the handle of the door and pushed it, yet the door did not even budge. The female voice grew near and he let out a sigh. Whatever. Kyle turned around and gazed at the two figures circling Lucas with concerned expressions. Prince Lucas, why did you enter the treasure island when you are injured? The red-haired female grasped Lucas's hand with a concerned sigh. But Kyle noticed with a raised brow how Lucas's eyes turned extremely cold as he yanked his hand away. Noticing his presence, the girl turned around and stared at him with a pair of familiar golden eyes. Kyle blinked. The pair of eyes, it was very similar to Nine's, and his suspicions turned out to be correct when the girl gasped at him with a loud exclamation. Kyle! Lucas and the other boy standing behind her were stunned at her reaction. Still, before they could question her, she closed the distance between her and Kyle with a bright smile. You are Kyle, right? She paused for a second and straightened her wrinkled clothes. I am Seraphine, Nine's sister. He told me about you. Kyle gave her a quick nod. Her eyes were indeed similar to Nine's. However, he could not pinpoint the reason why Nine told his sister about him. Suddenly, Seraphine held out her hand, but Kyle immediately stepped back. His frown deepened. What? With an apologetic smile, Seraphine called for Lucas and the other boy standing behind her. She brightly introduced them to Kyle. Yet his mood dampened with each passing second, not because of her but because of one of her teammates. The muscular blonde-haired youth standing beside Lucas stepped forward with a polite smile. He gazed at Bia and unconsciously extended his hand toward Kyle. Hey, I am Sen. Kyle gazed at his hand for a few seconds but did not grasp it. Instead, he stared at him with a cold expression. Kyle. Kyle Ohan. Sen's smile stiffened when he heard the surname Ohan. Still, he immediately shook his head inwardly. Impossible. He recalled the last time he heard this surname. It has been a few years. Moreover, the owner of the surname was a loser with only B-rank talent, someone he mocked in his younger days. So how was it possible for the same person to stand opposite him, inside a realm filled with extremely powerful creatures? Not to mention the fact that this Kyle Ohan owned a legendary fire phoenix. Also, he had silver hair, not black. He threw the thought at the back of his head and took back his hand with a polite smile because Kyle did not shake it. You have a nice name. Sen did not look at his eyes because for some reason he was having an ominous feeling about it. He stepped back but contrary to his expectations Kyle hummed softly. Yet the words that came out of his mouth were so cold that they sent chills down Sen's spine. Sen, it's been a long time indeed. Chapter 317, Cure. Sen lifted his wary eyes but Kyle walked away in another direction. Did I make a mistake? He watched his back with sweat trickling down his forehead. I probably did. With a shake of his head, Sen took a step back to stand behind Lucas. Kyle Ohan, the name was indeed familiar. Regardless, he was sure the person opposite him was just another rich young master. Sen scoffed in his mind when Lucas glared at him. At first, after entering the realm, he found the prince because they were supposed to stay together, but the prince was just too useless. That's why when Seraphine left Lucas behind with the excuse of his injuries. He thought they finally got rid of the unnecessary baggage, but how wrong he was. Someone just had to go out of his way and save Lucas. In the distance, Kyle's brow knitted together into a frown. He grabbed another door handle and pushed it, but no matter how much he tried, the door did not open. With a hum, he gazed back at the trio looking at him with different expressions. Seraphine looked very happy for some reason, Lucas grateful, and Sen, he looked wary. It's not like I care. He walked back and stood in the middle of the barren land. Kyle's eyes wandered off to the trio. Do you have any idea what we need to do? What about the mechanical voice? Seraphine took the initiative to answer him with a beautiful smile. We heard nothing after we entered this place. Also, we tried to open a few doors but failed. Kyle gave her a nod. He gazed up toward the ceiling with a frown. Maybe we need to wait. Still, unlike the trio, he roamed around the chamber, inspecting every corner properly. At first, Seraphine tried to follow behind him, but she soon got tired and quietly went to sit beside Lucas, and Sen. Kyle's feet did not stop as he checked one door after another. Bai closed her eyes comfortably on his shoulder with a yawn. Still, her peace did not last for long because after quietly pushing the doors for a while, Kyle suddenly used his flames to freeze one of them. The trio sitting in the distance stood up in shock. They stared at the surging cold flames that spread out to enclose the wooden door in a tight embrace. Seraphine's eyes sparkled with awe. A barely visible smile tugged at the corner of her lips. I knew it, he is the strongest. Without caring about her two teammates, she hurriedly went to stand behind Kyle obediently. Opposite her, the cold flames vanished into thin air, leaving behind a thin layer of ice. In the next second, the ice crumbled into tiny particles that drifted away with the wind. Lucas and Sen glanced at each other and staggered forward to stand behind Seraphine. No way, they wanted to be left behind. Kyle's eyes narrowed when the ice vanished. He stepped forward. After the door crumbled, pitch-black darkness spilled out from the hollow surface. Bia's eyes flickered. I believe you are not going to jump inside, right? Kyle let out a chuckle, and before Bia could stop him, he jumped into the darkness. After all, moving forward was far better than being trapped in a single place. After he vanished into the darkness, Haley's loud cry rang out behind him. Wait! The boar's eyes widened when his claw grasped into thin air. He panicked and, without caring about the scared and shocked trio around him, dived into the darkness behind Kyle. At the same time, Kyle's vision blurred for a few seconds, but before he could balance himself midair, his feet touched a smooth surface. He blinked when he felt a strange, wet sensation around his body. A blinding light flashed in front of his eyes, and a familiar mechanical voice echoed in the air. Welcome new participants to the 7 Treasure Land. Total new arrivals too. A B-rank divine beast and a rank human. Loading, unable to detect the rank of the human, automatic rank would be assigned. Conclusion, 2 new participants. A B-rank divine beast and a F-rank human. Please do your best to find ZZ. Loading, abnormal entry has been detected. To preserve the rules, the test would be changed to punish the participants accordingly. Please do your best to find the cure. In the 965 treasure land, Kyle groaned when a sharp pain stabbed his head. For some reason, he staggered on his feet and stiffly dropped to his knees. Similar to him, Bia's eyes were also cloudy. She flapped her wings and shook her head to remove the haze, but suddenly a suction force appeared behind them. A visible tear materialized in the air, but before the tear could suck them inside, Haley grabbed Kyle from his shoulder and dragged him upward toward the place he fell from. Kyle's eyes shot open when he was tossed above a hard surface. He flipped his body midair and tried to balance himself, but his eyes dilated when he saw the size of his feet. With a startled cry, he crashed into the sand. Bia's eyes widened when her mind cleared up. She flapped her wings, but someone grabbed her neck tightly. "Stop moving," Haley coughed out and slowly dropped her to the ground. A trail of blood seeped out from his mouth, staining the pure white fur on his jaw red. In the distance, Lucas, Seraphine, and Sen were still processing what was happening around them with wide eyes. Bia settled her body and her eyes darted around to look for Kyle. She froze when she saw Haley's grim expression. "What happened?" Haley let out a pained sigh. His body trembled a little as he pointed toward Kyle. "I am not allowed to help others, especially the ones who broke the rules. It's punishment." Bia followed his finger, and her eyes almost popped out of their sockets when she saw Kyle's tiny figure crawling out from the sand. Kyle's green eyes twinkled with a hint of annoyance when he patted his clothes, only to notice that somehow they had gotten shorter on his body. "Huh." He held out his palms and sucked in a shuddering breath. They were short, very similar to a 5 or 6-year-old kid. "What the fuck?" A curse slipped out from his mouth as he wriggled inside the oversized clothes wrapped around his body. "What the hell happened?" "Bia," he cried out with a perplexed expression. Bia immediately circled above his head with a familiar, panicked expression. The duo froze in their spots when Haley's thunderous roar echoed in the chamber. "Shut up. You two stay still for a second." Kyle glared at him with red eyes. "How can I shut up in this situation?" He clicked his mouth shut when Haley's sharp eyes pressed down at his small body. Bia landed on his shoulder, but Kyle lost his balance and dropped on his butt because she was too heavy. Haley closed his eyes and massaged his temples. He couldn't help but wonder, did the human also lost his intelligence with his size? After a few minutes of panic, Kyle calmed his nerves. Still, inwardly he was crying. At first, he was worried his family would fail to recognize him due to his hair color and eye color. Now with such a tiny body, would they even believe he was Kyle? Haley let out a scoff. "Don't worry, it's just an illusion. You need to find the cure and you will return to your original appearance." Finally, Kyle released a relieved breath. He almost thought he had to live as a child from now on. After closing his eyes for a minute, he stared at the boar with a deep expression. "What cure? Where is it? And how can I find it?" Haley's eyebrow twitched a little. He suffered a few injuries when he forcefully dragged Kyle out from the tier. "Kid, you should be grateful I grabbed you on time, or else I don't think you would have seen another ray of light in this life." Kyle gave him a quick nod. "Thank you for saving my life. Now please tell me, where is the cure you're talking about?" "Wait, I remember, the mechanical voice said something when you dragged me out." 965 Treasure Island." Haley narrowed his eyes. The thank you did not sound genuine. "Yes, that's the place." Kyle stood up and his large clothes dragged behind his body when he paced around with a serious expression. "How can I leave this place as soon as possible?" Haley's gaze wandered around for a few seconds before he fixed his eyes on one of the doors. "Just leave through that door. You have already broken the rules of this place. So I don't think you need to complete the trial." Kyle hurriedly walked to the door and pushed it open. "Bia, let's leave." "Haley, come with us. You need to tell me the location of 965 Treasure Land." The trio standing behind Haley finally snapped out of their trance and glanced at each other. Seraphine was the first to approach Kyle's short figure with a panicked expression. "Wait, if you are leaving this place, I want to go together." Kyle's mind was too occupied with his own problem to stop her. He and Bia immediately jumped in the door and left the castle. Behind him, Haley gazed at Seraphine, Lucas, and Sen. He waved his hand, and a thin shield appeared around the trio's body. With a flick of his finger, the trio vanished into the door before he followed as well. Chapter 318, Just Tell Me What You Know. The moment Kyle's body emerged from the dark portal, he tried to float midair. But his eyes widened in disbelief when the mana within his body refused to budge. In an instant, he lost his balance and tumbled down the stairway. He let out a painful hiss and rubbed his back. "What the heck?" After him, Bia flew out from the portal. Her eyes trailed downward, landing on the little body sprawling at the edge of the stairway. She hurriedly closed the distance and circled above Kyle with concerned eyes. "Why are you lying on the ground?" Kyle closed his eyes and moved his hand to massage his temples, but the oversized sleeves made it impossible for him to reach his head. He stared at her with blank eyes. "Just because I wanted to." Haley's big frame stepped out from the portal with 3 round, glowing, transparent shields floating around him. As if waiting for him to appear, Kyle hurriedly dragged his clothes and stood up. "Haley, I cannot use my mana. What the hell happened?" Haley gazed at him and let out a tired sigh. It's because you are in a younger body right now. I don't think you'll be able to use it until the illusion wears off. He stopped mid-sentence abruptly when blue flames surged around Kyle's body. The flames traveled upward and vanished into thin air. A surprised expression appeared on the boar's face as he watched the tiny sparks floating in the air. Kyle shot him a frown. I can use the flames, but I cannot use any other skill. Nor can I float. Haley closed his eyes and hummed softly. I am not sure. Based on the punishment, you should have become younger and lost all your strength like a little kid. But there seems to be something strange about the flames you are using. Somehow the illusion doesn't seem to affect them. Kyle gave him a serious nod and took a step forward, but he stumbled on his clothes. Taking a deep breath, he quickly rolled up his sleeves and hiked up his pants to make them fit better. He then gazed at Bia with narrowed eyes. I have a question. Why am I the only one going through the punishment? I believe I was not alone who jumped in the door. Haley landed beside him with a chuckle. It's because she is your bonded beast. Moreover, it's not her original form, so the illusion did not have any effect on her. The trio enclosed in the floating round shields could do nothing but watch as Kyle and Haley talked as if their presence meant nothing. Still, before Haley could enclose Kyle in a shield as well, Bia increased her size and dived down to land in front of Kyle. Climb up. It's not safe if you cannot use your skills. Kyle wanted to jump, but considering his size, he slowly grabbed her feathers and climbed her body. But his somber mood made it impossible for him to enjoy the ride. The phoenix soared above in the air, heading straight toward the opening from where they entered the place. Bia's body shot out from the tunnel gracefully. A few large insects gathered around the opening jumped at her, but they backed off when crimson flames spread out under her wings. Bia stopped immediately when she recalled how Kyle could not use his skills. She flew above in the clear sky with knitted brows. Are you all right? Kyle tapped her neck with a hum. I am fine. Just like before, he did not feel particularly uncomfortable due to Bia's flames. His body was still as cold as before, and his hair was silver instead of black. It's like the illusion cannot affect my bloodline. He gazed down when Haley flew out from the tunnel with the trio floating around him. For some reason, the insects did not dare to approach the winged boar. Kyle clicked his tongue with annoyance. Hey, Bia asked Haley to throw that golden-haired individual away. Bia's gaze wandered off to the person Kyle was talking about. A not-so-handsome muscle figure with light yellow color hair. At first, she thought she was imagining when she sensed Kyle's discomfort, but it seems she was right. I cannot contact him until he is speaking inside my mind. Just tell Haley directly. I think he is taking the trio with him because he thought they were your friends. Kyle scoffed and focused his gaze in front of him. Friends, I don't think I need to befriend every person I meet here. But I am indeed tempted to punch someone in the face. He stopped and gazed at Haley when the boar appeared beside him. Where is the treasure land we are finding? Haley narrowed his eyes in the distance. I don't remember properly, but I believe we need to travel toward east. Kyle gave him a nod, but then suddenly he recalled the important questions he wanted to ask the boar. He thought for a few seconds as they traveled toward the east. I want to ask some questions. Haley hummed in approval, thinking maybe the human wanted to know more about the illusion, but Kyle's next words made him lose his balance midair. Who is James? A shocked expression appeared on Haley's face as he balanced himself. What? Kyle raised his brow at his reaction. So you do know him. What about Odiak and Elizabeth? Haley's heartbeat quickened. He rolled the names on his tongue. It has been a long time since someone called out his master's name in front of him. He let out a trembling breath when countless emotions clouded his eyes. But unfortunately for him, Kyle was not done yet. Are they alive or did they? Lost under the third shadow general, Haley gazed at him with bated breath. Immediately, a thin layer of mana enveloped him and Kyle, separating their voice from the trio hovering nearby. How the hell did you know about all this? Kyle rolled his large sleeves with a frown. Bia had gone silent under him because she was also interested in their talk. I saw an old memory. It was stored in a gem. Odiak called it a resonite gem. Haley sucked in a deep breath and mumbled under his breath. A resonite gem in this place. What were the odds of a resonite gem being left in this place? And what were the chances of someone stumbling upon that exact gem in such a massive realm? He couldn't help but stare at Kyle for a few seconds. What about the gem? It's vanished after I saw the stored memories. Haley moved his head in a silent nod. Indeed, the resonite gem can only be used once. After replaying the memories, it would scatter in the air. Kyle waited for a minute before staring at the boar with knitted brows. So, Haley let out a sigh. I know a lot, but not enough to answer all of your questions. Also, this knowledge is not recorded anywhere for a lot of reasons. It's dangerous as well. Do you still want to know? Kyle's frown deepened. He really wanted to ask why it was dangerous when they were just talking about some past events. Just tell me what you know because, for some reason, I am having a bad feeling about all this. A bright light flashed around Haley's body. He turned into a ball of light and slowly settled himself on Kyle's shoulder. He started with his master, James, a powerful and strong human and a genius among his peers. Someone who was strong enough to reach the pseudo-divine rank at a very young age. The story was ordinary. It started with a peaceful planet and a bunch of powerful youths, all trying to outdo each other and become stronger. Yet everything changed when their elders told them about the danger lurking around the planet. All the people who reached pseudo-divine rank were forced to leave the planet to fight against an unknown enemy. James, Odiak, and Elizabeth were among the first batch of people who returned alive from the war. Haley never left the planet because he was not strong enough, so he never got the chance to know more about the things happening outside the boundaries of the blue planet. The only thing he knew from his master's tense mood was that the planet was in great danger. After James reached the divine rank, he wanted to form his army to fight the enemies. He and the dwarf named Odiak become great friends. The duo worked together to construct a huge shield around the planet. They even designed this realm and many towers on the planet to train young people with a lot of potential to grow stronger. However, while everything was going smoothly, the dark race who at that time lived with the residents of Blue Planet suddenly went out of control. Chapter 319. I Am Not. Haley let out a grim sigh, expressing his frustration. The dark race may have caused chaos by targeting innocent people in small villages, but as long as he remembered, they were never truly strong enough to engage in a full-blown war with the other races. However, for some reason, when Odiak and James were busy constructing the shield around the planet, two divine rank individuals emerged from the same race. When James and a few strong individuals went to confront them, they were shocked because seemingly the dark race found a natural underground earth layer filled with extremely potent weeds brimming with mana in the middle of the dark forest. James was tempted to take the entire layer, but the two divine rank individuals from the dark race posed a greater threat than he had imagined. In the end, although James emerged victorious, he lost a capable individual in the fight. And to make matters worse, the precious layer was lost due to the battle fought in that place. James and his companions were vexed. It was a tedious task, but they decided to finish all the people of the dark race residing on the blue planet once and for all. After all, the dark race did nothing but spread chaos, but before they could act on their plan, one of the nearby planets was attacked by the third Shadow General. At that time, Elizabeth, the one dearest to James, was coincidentally on the same planet to look for some rare herbs. She barely escaped alive and returned when James and Odiak were busy with the secret realm. James lost his composure when she went into a deep coma in his arms. Odiak tried to stop him, but he immediately left the planet with all the divine rank individuals to fight the third Shadow General. Odiak could do nothing but watch as his friend left. With a regretful expression, he hid the planet in a thin blanket, waiting for James's return. Regardless, the peace on the blue planet was short-lived because with the powerful seats left empty, only after a year chaos erupted. The residents started scrambling to grab a higher position, trying to secure their own place of influence on the planet. The race who reaped the most from all this was none other than the dark race. The same race that was on the verge of being wiped out in James's presence. In a fit of anger, Odiak took charge and trapped all the remaining people from the dark race in the secret realm. While he was cleaning the mess, a messenger from James's team finally returned to the planet. The man only had a single message. "We need help." Odiak was perplexed, but he wasted no time and immediately announced to the whole planet that they needed strong people who were willing to fight for their home. Even though no one reached divine rank in James's absence, the planet still had a lot of capable individuals. Yet, at that exact moment, the Mer people lost their queen. They started pointing fingers at the demi-humans due to the ongoing conflict between the two races. However, Odiak knew the reason behind the queen's death because he received a strange request on the day she died. She went against nature and used her life force to see the things that were meant to stay hidden. In the end, the mermaid race decided not to join the battle and instead retreated deep into the sea. Odiak was frustrated, but he was alone. That's why he had very little influence on all the other races except his own, not to mention the fact that he was pressed for time. So instead of gathering more people, he had an idea. He found the planet's core, and in just one day he was able to harness the mana from it and connect it to the protective shield around the planet. This created a powerful and constant flow of energy to the barrier around the planet, isolating it completely from the outside world. He thought, with no strong individuals present to protect the planet, this shield would become its defense until he and James returned. Haley's expression hardened when he recalled the time when Odiak asked him to stay in the secret realm and keep an eye on the dark race. A lot of people who decided to follow Odiak also left behind pieces of their consciousness to guide the younger generation. After Odiak left, the secret realm was completely closed off. I have no idea what happened in the outside world during that time. But when the realm was finally opened again after countless years, the people who entered were so weak that I had to double-check to make sure I wasn't imagining things. He paused for a few seconds and gazed at Kyle. The human had completely gone still under him. With a shake of his head, he left Kyle's shoulder. I watched how all of them were killed by the dark race brutally. I wanted to break the rules of the realm and help, but I was tied to the last treasure island where the divine essence was kept. In the end, the Guardian picked some promising individuals and forcefully threw them out from the realm. Kyle's eyes were troubled. The information he received was overwhelming, but instead of getting answers, his questions increased. He massaged his temples with a frown. It's strange, the whole story. If the planet went through so many crises, why is it that the knowledge in the outsider world so lacking? Haley shook his head. No, information about Odiak and James was never hidden. Maybe the duo names were forgotten with time. The only information that was erased was about the power structure above SSS plus rank and the lurking danger around the planet due to the Mermaid Queen's request. No one knew why she made such a request to Odiak before her death. Kyle's frown deepened as he gazed at the white ball floating around him. Then why did you tell me about all this? For some reason, he had a nagging feeling at the back of his head that it would have been better if he knew nothing about all this. Haley sucked in a deep breath and stopped in front of his face. It's because before leaving, Odiak asked me to share the information with the first outsider who mentioned his name to me. Kyle shut his mouth for a minute and went over everything in his mind. A trail of sweat trickled down from his forehead when he asked his next question. So, did James and Odiak win? Did they save the planet? Or, Haley closed his eyes. They never came back. So I don't know. Also, the connection between me and James is too thin due to the distance, so I am not sure if he is alive. Kyle tapped Bia's neck and let out a dry chuckle. It's hard to believe that he discovered all of this, especially when he wasn't even sure about himself. Will I put my life on the line if someone unknown and strong attacked the planet out of nowhere? Of course, Kyle knew no matter what he would prioritize the safety of his loved ones first. As for the rest, they were always welcome to handle things on their own. Suddenly, Alec's face flashed through his mind. Why do I feel like Alec is more suited to know about all this than me? The whole thing about the first person to know about Odiak's name. It's like the resonite gem was not meant for me, but somehow I found it. Haley raised his eyes with a frown. What are you thinking? You were fated to know about all this. His voice was so firm that Kyle let out a tired sigh. Are you sure? The boar changed back into his original form with a confused expression. He wanted to say he was, but suddenly a loud cry rang out in the distance. Haley's eyes immediately narrowed as he increased his speed. Thus he failed to hear the faint murmur echoing behind him. I am not. Bia sensed Kyle's emotions and increased her speed behind Haley. Do not be depressed. I don't think the planet is in danger, or else why would it stay safe for so many years? Kyle mused softly. I hope I am being paranoid, but what should I do when so many things are pointing out the fact that the planet is in danger? They traveled to the east before Haley stopped above a grassy field. Countless individuals were fighting with the people of the dark race. The air was heavy with a thick smell of blood. Kyle narrowed his eyes when he saw many familiar faces. Lara, Mia, Alec, and Carcel, the four of them were fighting with a S-rank winged man. His eyes paused on UA and 9 as he cursed it out. What the heck is happening? I only left them alone for not more than 3 days. Chapter 320, Help Your Pitiful Friends. Alec and Lara together pushed back the pointy earth shreds thrown at them. Alec scoffed at the winged man opposite him as he wiped the blood trickling down his cheek. He raised his sword to attack again, but a huge shadow materialized above him. With a back flip, he snapped his eyes up, only to see a familiar pair of bright red wings. Bia, immediately Alec let out a chuckle. The battle is going to end earlier than my expectations. For some reason, after he and the others left Kyle, they heard the news that all the outsiders were gathered in the east. Why? It's because an unknown, supposedly very strong individual asked someone to spread the word that the east side is safe. The same person also asked everyone to form teams. In that way, they would be able to fight the winged creatures easily. Alec would be lying if he said he was not surprised to see so many people gathered together without caring about their race. Still, the peace did not last long because just like the outsiders, a few people from the dark race also traveled to the east. It did not stop at that, and just within a day countless dark race people flocked toward the east. That's why Alec and the gathered individuals had no other choice but to start a full-blown battle with them. Lara blinked at Alec's smiling face and followed his gaze, only to see a familiar fire phoenix flying above them. Her eyes widened slightly, but then a faint smile spread across her face. Bia has transformed into a true phoenix. Just like the duo, many heads snapped up to see the beautiful phoenix flying across the sky. Crimson flames flickered gently behind the majestic beast as it made its way down. Someone from the dark race cried out loudly at one of his fellow men. Why is the leader not here yet? We will be wiped out at this rate. Go send another signal through the artifact. However, the one he had been speaking to was attacked by a few demi-humans and lost his life even before he could reply. Among the many people, Nine and Jian both gazed at each other when they saw Bia. A wide grin spread across Jian's face as he waved at Bia with enthusiasm. Kyle and Bia are here. Haha, the battle is gonna end now. Nine gave him a quick nod, and together the duo kicked the winged man they were fighting. You bet. Also, if Kyle is here, does that mean the leader of the dark race has kicked the bucket? Jian's ears perked up. A pity I was not able to witness it. Just like them, all those who knew Kyle personally were sure the battle they had been fighting for so many hours would end the moment Kyle stepped in. Yet for some strange reason, instead of landing on the ground, the phoenix circled above their heads, occasionally throwing fireballs here and there. Also, the said person who would end the battle was nowhere to be seen. Alex's brows knitted together. Is Bia alone? Where is Kyle? A few pairs of concerned eyes traveled toward him with the same question, but he had no answer. At the same time in the sky, Bia's body tensed when Kyle grabbed her neck feathers. At first, she dived down toward Mia the moment she saw her fighting with an ugly man, but the tiny kid sitting on her back stopped her immediately. Don't you dare to go down, they can handle it, Kyle cried out in his mind. No way he would go down. What if someone accidentally stepped on him and he lost his precious body parts? He shuddered at the thought. We will help them from above. In the distance, hidden behind a faint mana layer, Haley let out a sigh. He gazed at the three people floating around him, and with a wave of his paw, the shields around their bodies crumbled, startling Seraphine, Sen, and Lucas out of their stupor. The trio closed their eyes, bracing themselves for a big fall, but to their surprise, their bodies gently landed on the grass bathed in blood. Seraphine blinked, but her relief was short-lived because a winged female attacked her from behind. Due to the unexpected attack, she was not able to dodge on time and her body toppled backward. "Allah, help me," she screamed for help, but the air was filled with the sound of clashing weapons. That's why her cry went unnoticed. Her eyes went wide with horror when the winged female clawed toward her chest, but before the latter pointy nails could touch her, Bia appeared between them and crimson flames surged around her wings. The winged female from the dark race constructed a water shield to stop the crimson flames, but her shield evaporated into thin air due to intense heat. She held out her hand to construct another shield, but then suddenly a sea of blue flames enclosed her body in a cold embrace. Her cries echoed through the air, sending chills down the spines of all who heard them. The sheer desperation in her voice was palpable. Many people stopped in their attacks when a glistening ice sculpture reflected in their eyes. Sweat trickled down the onlookers' foreheads because, under their shocked gaze, the once glistening ice sculpture crumbled into faint particles and vanished into thin air. Kyle's eyes traveled to the girl who was supposed to be Nine's sister. She wiped her hands and gazed at him with moist eyes. Seraphine opened her mouth with a sweet smile. Thank you. Even though her clothes and hair were unkempt, she looked stunning with a smile. Kyle did not say anything and pointed his small finger behind her. Immediately she turned around and saw another person attacking her from behind, but this time she was prepared. Moreover, Sen jumped in to help her. Bia flapped her wings and soared into the air, yet for a second her eyes reflected pity for Seraphine. If only she could hear you right now. Kyle's eyes traveled down on the battlefield with a frown. What are you talking about? I am only stating the facts. She is too weak. I doubt she is Nine's sister. Bia's gaze wandered off to Seraphine and the pity in her eyes doubled. Still, she did not dare to voice her opinion to Kyle. Her eyes are not even hiding the fact that she is flirting with Kyle. After the blue flames appeared, those who recognized them were certain that Kyle had used them. They believed he was riding on Bia's back, but why the hell did he not jump down to help them? Also, the last they saw him, he could fly on his own. So why the hell is he riding on Bia? Jian could not take it anymore when he was flung backward due to a sudden attack. He raised his angry eyes and pointed his trembling finger at Bia. Kyle, my brother, if you are here, just help your pitiful friends. Why the hell are you only helping pretty girls? Opposite him, Zhi's fox ears perked up. She locked her gaze on the majestic phoenix and casually rolled up one of her sleeves, revealing a tiny scratch. Ah, my arm is hurt, she cried out with a pitiful voice. After all, she was 100% confident in her beauty. The moment her voice drifted off, Kyle's eyebrow twitched violently, but he still refused to go down. Instead, he used his flames to enclose the dark race people from time to time. After trying for one more time, Zhi clicked her tongue and jumped on her feet. Beside her, Yue's eyes flickered with conflicted emotions as she gazed at her shameless friend. Are you done? Zhi gathered her smooth hair on her shoulders and raised her spear with a smile. Should I try one more time? Maybe he did not hear me. Yue rolled her eyes and focused on her opponent. Just like Jian, there was another person who seemed dissatisfied with Kyle. Nine eyes narrowed at the phoenix as he distanced himself from his opponent. He waved his hand in the air. Bia, come down. I want to see if he is all right. A concerned expression appeared on his face. Did Kyle possibly lose one of his legs or arms while fighting with the dark race leader? Bia gazed down at his figure with a sigh. Kyle, should I go down? Kyle massaged his temples with a groan. Why the hell do they want to see me so badly? He tapped her neck with a sigh. Let me down, but make sure to stay with me. With a hum, the phoenix dived down straight toward Nine. Her wings spread out to clear the space around them when her body landed in front of Nine. A pair of bright eyes stared at Nine, and with a tilt of her head, she lowered one of her wings so Kyle could step down. Kyle secured his large sleeves one last time and steeled his expression. He wanted to jump down but stopped because it would be very tragic if he got injured in front of Nine. Amidst the sounds of weapons and battle cries, a few eyes snapped toward Bia as Kyle gingerly left her back and gazed at Nine. At first, Nine blinked with disbelief. Slowly, he eyed him from head to toe with shock. Wait. When did Kyle have a son? Kyle closed his eyes and opened them again with a blank expression. What son are you talking about? It's me, I cannot tell you the details now. That's why stop gawking at me and go fight with the others. After staring at Kyle for a few seconds, Nine broke out into a fit of laughter. Wait, Kyle, how the hell did you manage to turn into a 5-year-old kid just in a few days? He grabbed his stomach and laughed out loud amidst the heavy atmosphere around him. His loud exclamation echoed in all directions. The eyes staring at Kyle were also shocked. Yet, unlike Nine, they were too occupied to comment. Frustration etched on Kyle's face as he stomped toward Nine with a hard expression. He flicked his sleeves and smacked him, but Nine did not even flinch under the weight of his tiny hand. Nine clapped his mouth shut when Kyle stared at him with a deep expression. Still, instead of intimidating, his eyes looked rather adorable. Chapter 321, Just Stop Speaking. Nine suppressed his smile and grabbed Kyle's hand with a serious expression. Don't worry, Kai. I mean brother, I will protect you. His expression was so righteous that Kyle almost believed himself to be a kid who needed protection. A blank expression appeared on his face as he yanked his hand away from Nine. No thank you, Nine stared at him from head to toe with crescent eyes. Are you sure? With a hum, Kyle narrowed his eyes and blue flames appeared around his body. The air turned extremely cold as the flames enclosed him in a protective shield. Startled, Nine stepped back with a wry smile. Due to his appearance, I forget he is the strongest, not to mention the flames. Nine's eyes trailed off to the surging flames. He stared at them for a second and blinked. Am I imagining, or the color of the flames had really gotten darker? A familiar cry snapped him out of his thoughts. Nine looked back at the battered person crawling toward him. Jian raised his teary eyes to stare at Nine. He opened his mouth, but when he saw Kyle, he clicked his mouth shut. What am I doing? He is a kid, how can I ask him to help? Instantly, he jumped to his feet and approached Bia, his only hope. Bia. I need help, come with me. The phoenix stared at him for a second before gazing at Kyle. With a sigh, Kyle gave her a quick nod. Stay safe. Bia spread her wings and followed behind Jian, who jumped in the battle with joy. After Bia's towering figure left, an injured winged man attacked Kyle and Nine with a loud cry. Nine kicked the man away smoothly before stepping toward Kyle. Can you use any other skill except your flames? At Kyle's silence, Nine knew he couldn't. With a frown, he stopped another attack aimed at them from behind. Should I stay with you? No need, go fight with the others. Kyle gazed at the battlefield around him and the flames around his body became violent. As long as I avoid direct combat, I believe I can help. He sucked in a breath and left Nine's side. A few eyes traveled in his direction, but because of the chilling flames, not many dared to approach him, and the ones who did were reduced to glistening ice sculptures. Kyle's eyes scanned the surroundings as he cautiously climbed the highest boulder around him to oversee the situation better. The hair on his back stood up when a winged man attacked him from behind. With a decisive move, he jumped forward before the attack could land on him. Kyle's body landed on the ground as he rolled off and stared at the person who attacked him. A trail of blood oozed out from his palm due to the sudden movement. He clicked his tongue. I can use the flames, but my body is too weak to sustain deep injuries. What a realistic punishment. The atmosphere was heavy with various metallic sounds ringing in the air. Kyle rubbed his palm with his thumb and gazed at the man charging toward him with a cold expression. The wings behind the man fluttered frantically as he extended his hand, but before his nails could reach Kyle, blue flames materialized around him. The flames took the shape of spears and stabbed him from all directions. A painful cry rang out, and within a few seconds, the man turned into another ice sculpture that vanished into thin air. Kyle grabbed his knees and dragged his body to stand up properly. He wanted to attack another dark race individual fighting with an elf beside him when a familiar voice echoed behind him. Are you all right, huh? He lifted his gaze to stare back at the pair of amber eyes looking at him with worry. Kyle blinked in surprise. Unlike their previous encounter, Yue appeared disheveled. Her hair cascaded down her back and shoulders untied. A frown creased his forehead when he sensed the aura around her. What happened now? Bia did say she can absorb the aura from treasures, but is it really safe for her body? he wanted to ask, but then he held back. First, it wasn't his place to pry, and second, they weren't exactly close enough to share secrets like that. Amidst all this, he failed to notice the hesitation in Yue's steps when she saw his knitted brows. Is he uncomfortable? Different from Yue, who stopped a few steps away from him, Zhu immediately made her way toward Kyle with a bright and curious smile. Kyle, how did you turn into a kid? Can you tell me I want to reduce my age as well? Her sentence was cut short because someone attacked her from the left. With a curse, she spun her spear and stabbed it toward her enemy. Yue hurriedly formed a few spells to help Zhe. Countless lava snakes rose around her body, and the moment she raised her fingers, the snakes shot out toward her enemy. Kyle gazed at her figure for a second, but then started walking in the opposite direction. He used his flames to help the ones in need while carefully avoiding all direct contact with the others. Even though the battle was quite intense and bloody, he could see it. The battle was in their favor, especially due to Alec, Carcel, Bia, and Jian. Kyle let out a chuckle. Jian would always run off at the first sign of danger, but surprisingly, he was the one taking down the most enemies. Suddenly, he raised his head when a loud battle cry reverberated in the distance. Kyle raised his brow when he saw a familiar figure flying in the sky. It's been a while since he saw the winged demi-human. Sinan dived down with a lightning-fast speed and rolled on the ground to join the battle. Kyle mused softly. It's like he's become comfortable with heights. The last time I remember, he was scared to even use his wings. Soon, just like the dark race, many outsiders arrived to join the battle. A few familiar faces also appeared, and Kyle was surprised when he saw Regius with two beautiful demi-human girls. Regius was practically glowing with smiles as he entered the battle and fought against the enemies. The battle raged on for an entire day, and with every passing minute, more and more outsiders joined the fight against the dark race. In the end, the remaining dark race people wanted to flee, but for some reason Alec gathered many people to surround them from all directions. He didn't stop until he had taken down every last person from the dark race. But even after the battle was over, Alec and the others knew that a few dark race people might still be alive. Afterward, everyone erupted in joy and raised their weapons high in the sky to celebrate their hard-earned victory. Countless faint murmurs echoed in the air as everyone gathered together to discuss what they should do next. Regardless of the buzzing atmosphere, Alec and Carcel both raised their weapons to attract everyone's attention. The crowd went silent, but a few people were still talking as everyone stared at the two men standing opposite them. Alec cleared his throat, but before he could speak, a huge figure landed beside him. Almost everyone went quiet when they saw the majestic phoenix. Alec gazed at Bia and blinked. He followed her eyes only to see Kyle's tiny figure standing at the end of the crowd. Kyle raised his hand and waved at him. With a smile, Alec raised his voice and delivered a quick speech. First, he expressed how happy he was to see everyone fight together regardless of their race. He did not go into much detail and closed off his speech with a few more lines. I believe the strong enemies had been killed. Now all of you can venture around and enter the treasure islands to fight for treasures. Still, to make sure no more deaths occur, please stay together with your friends. However, the ones who think they are capable of protecting themselves are welcome to roam around alone. After Alec was done, slowly the crowd scattered in different directions. There were a few people who made teams, but many left alone. He sighed. Still, the danger lurking around them was gone, so he believed at least no one would die under the dark race now. Alec and Carcel went toward Kyle. Just like the duo, all of Kyle's friends approached him. After all, they could not just leave him to fend for himself in his current condition. Kyle let out a sigh and hurriedly told them he was fine. He just needed to find a cure that was present inside a treasure island. Yet his words backfired, and Jian and Nine immediately urged to go together. Nine was very displeased when he saw Seraphine lurking around Kyle, but he could do nothing but tolerate her presence. Kyle groaned when he saw so many people surrounding him from all directions. The voices grew louder and louder as they insisted on following him until he found the cure. In the end, he grabbed his ears with a fed-up expression. Okay. Just stop speaking already. Chapter 322. Odiac Aura. There was silence as everyone stared at Kyle, who was looking at them with a tired expression. It would be a lie if Kyle said he did not like their enthusiasm for helping him, but taking so many people with him was impossible. Moreover, if they all entered the treasure island together with him, the difficulty would increase tenfold. Kyle ruffled his hair and the smile on his face was borderline evil, but for some unknown reason, the girls around him were looking at him with twinkling eyes. Mia's eyes trailed off to his injured palm, and without even thinking twice, she took out a healing potion from her storage ring. Kyle flinched when she sat down beside him so easily. Goosebumps flared up on his neck the moment she tried to grab his hand. With a sudden movement, he moved away. What? Ellie and Jia giggled at his reaction, and just like Mia, they also stepped closer to him. The two demi-human girls with Regius gazed at each other and also followed behind. Not because of Kyle, but because of the majestic phoenix sitting behind him. She glanced at him from head to toe. The kid version of Kyle was actually quite cute. She's trying to pour the potion on your injury. Kyle opened his mouth with an O and obediently held out his palm, blissfully unaware of the people who were staring daggers at him. Nine let out a dark chuckle and hurriedly dragged Ellie back. Dear, it's not good for men and women to sit so closely. Ellie blinked at his comment. But he is just a kid now. Carcel gave the couple a strange look, wondering if he should do the same or not. However, his usual expression made it impossible for him to show his dissatisfaction on his face. After Mia was done, Kyle stood up and cleared his throat. Guys, I think having too many people will make things more difficult. Also, I am not alone. Bia and Haley both are going with me. So don't worry, I will be fine. A few people were puzzled about who this Haley was. That's why he had to tell them about the winged boar who is supposedly the strongest in the realm. Still, he carefully omitted the fact that Haley could not help him much. With so many people gathered together, they had to introduce themselves to know about each other. Kyle quietly watched as they became familiar with each other. His eyes stopped on Giant, who seemed noticeably tense amidst the lively atmosphere. What happened to him? He is usually the most cheerful one. Wait, where is Kelvin? However, he was soon distracted by Yue. It had been a while since she had approached him, and now she was standing with Regius engaged in a lively conversation. He watched her for a minute and couldn't help but wonder why hasn't she approached him. At least the violent aura around her body is gone now. He looked away and gazed at Bia. The phoenix had long left his side. Now she was sitting on Mia's lap with a sleepy and content expression. Amidst everyone, only Sen looked uncomfortable. He gazed at the people around him. They were all strong, a lot stronger than him. Tusk, all rich people are gathered together. Just what the hell am I doing here? He hurriedly went up to Lucas to discuss whether they should leave, since they weren't part of Kyle's friend group. Also, he had this strange feeling that it might be better for him to stay away from Kyle. But before he could approach Lucas, someone grabbed his shoulder with a polite smile. Sinan unfurled his wings behind his back and smacked his back. Hey buddy, what's your name? How did you and Kyle become friends? Sen's expression stiffened. The strength of Sinan's smack was enough to shake his inner organs. He hurriedly grabbed the hand, dangerously edging closer to his back, and a forced smile appeared on his face. I do know him, but not much. He wanted to run away when he spotted Lucas nearby, but the demi-human was just too persistent. In the end, the duo entered into a conversation that looked totally awkward from a distance. Above in the sky, Haley watched the calm and lively atmosphere, and a smile spread across his face. How long has it been since he saw so many people chatting with each other so casually? It's been a long time indeed. He couldn't help but look at Kyle. The human had a good circle of friends, and it was clear from their expressions that they genuinely cared about him. They weren't greedy or selfish like some people. This group of kids. I feel like they are going to achieve a lot in the future, especially. His crescent eyes stopped on Kyle, the silver-haired human, but then he was distracted by the blue-haired human standing at a distance. Haley's ears perked up when he sensed a faint but familiar aura around him. His eyes widened instantly. Why the hell does he have Odiac aura in his body? He could barely hold himself back from leaping at the blue-haired human to get the answer to his question. With an agitated expression, Haley paced around the sky, eagerly watching as the crowd started leaving one by one. After all, Kyle made it clear that he would go alone with Bia. The moment the blue-haired youth left, Haley immediately followed behind him, forgetting the fact that he had to tell Kyle about the location of the treasure island. At the same time, Kyle said goodbye to those who were leaving. He raised his eye when Seraphine approached him with a smile. It was unbelievable, but she was really Nine's sister, because the moment she saw Nine, she immediately grabbed his arm and insisted on going together with him. Contrary to Seraphine's happy expression, Nine's brows were knitted together as he peeled her fingers from his arm one by one. Seraphine, you are not a kid, and now with the dark race gone, I believe you can take care of yourself. Kyle watched blankly as tears welled up inside Seraphine's eyes within a second. Also, her grip on Nine's arm tightened. Brother, how can you leave me alone? What if something happened to me? She then gazed at Kyle, and the tears in her eyes dropped to her cheeks. Kyle, he is leaving me. Can you take me with you? I swear I won't be a burden. Nine was completely shocked. He opened his mouth but then closed it again. What the heck just happened? His sister, who had never shed a tear before, was crying like a damsel in distress. Fortunately, before he could make matters worse with a curt reply, Lucas stepped in and gazed at Seraphine. Why are saying, I believe we need to stay together, so come with me and Sen. Anger flashed through Seraphine's eyes when she gazed at her old teammates. What the hell, can they not understand that I want to go with Kyle? However, to her dismay, Kyle immediately agreed with Lucas. Afterward, he hurriedly ran off in the opposite direction to avoid any further drama. Kyle called Bia, and she transformed into her phoenix form before landing beside him. He grabbed her feathers to climb on her back when a familiar voice sounded behind him. Kyle glanced back, but to his surprise, Yue stopped a few meters away from him. He released Bia feathers with a soft expression. Wait for a while. With a mischievous sparkle in her eyes, the phoenix raised an eyebrow as Kyle approached Yue. It seems he did not notice how he would hear Yue no matter when she called him. Well, Yue is good at cooking. Also, she is warm, unlike a cold ice cube, so I guess I'll give her my approval. Bia watched with utmost focus as Yue opened her mouth, but the beautiful moment was shattered when just stepped between them. Damn, what a timing. I don't like fox from now on. Wait, maybe they taste good. The tail behind the fox girl swirled left and right when she grabbed her knees to look at Kyle directly. Kyle, is the illusion on your body dangerous? If it's not, I want to reduce my age as well. Kyle let out a sigh. Why was this girl so obsessed with age? She clearly looked under her 20s. Suddenly, he gazed at her from head to toe. Maybe she is older, but how much? How old are you? Je blinked at his question and let out a smile. You should not ask girls about their age. Kyle gave her a quick nod and stepped away to look at Yue. The illusion is dangerous, so don't try anything, or else it can harm you. The ears on Je's head dropped in dejection. She gazed at Kyle, but the expression on his face was too cold. That's why she left him alone. What's he so angry about? I just asked a simple question. Unbeknownst to her, Kyle was not angry. He just felt frustrated because while he was talking to her, Yue left. His frown deepened as he made his way towards Bia. What did she want to say? He shook his head and threw the matter at the back of his head. I will ask her if I see her again. Kyle climbed on Bia's back and the phoenix soared into the sky. Bia sensed his sour mood but did not say anything. Instead, she laughed inwardly. It's rare for him to express so much just because of a single person. Bia circled the sky as the duo waited for a certain boar to show up. However, even after an hour, Haley was nowhere to be seen. Kyle's frustration increased and a curse slipped out from his mouth. Where the hell did he go? Chapter 323. Ask him, who is Odiak? Meanwhile, far away from Kyle's location, Haley's eyes followed the blue-haired human running below him. The human was not alone. 3 more humans were following him, but they split up after an hour. After observing them for a while, Haley found out that the blue-haired human name was Alec. The other 3 individuals with him were called Carcel, Lara, and Mia. When the trio left Alec and went their separate ways, Haley wondered if he should reveal himself in front of him. After thinking for a minute, he changed back into a white fur ball. The ball sped up behind Alec before circling his body. Alec froze in his spot for a second before he distanced himself from the strange ball floating around him. What is this thing? He stopped abruptly when the ball started speaking to him. Is your name Alec? Alec's eyes widened with shock. It took him a few seconds to digest the fact that the ball was speaking. Also, to make matters even stranger, the ball knew his name. Instantly, his first course of action was to use the system appraisal skill on the fur ball. System analysis. Name, Haley Bonded Beast. Age, 2679. Rank, SSS. Talent, SSS. Rank, unknown. Error, trying to find the cause. Loading, error, no more information provided. Haley, Alec mumbled under his breath. The name was quite familiar. He thought for a few seconds and suddenly Kyle's last words appeared in his mind. Wait, are you the same Haley who was supposed to help Kyle? What are you doing here? The ball froze midair, seemingly processing Alec's words. Then suddenly, a bright light flashed in front of Alec, forcing him to close his eyes for a second. Haley immediately changed back into his original form. His large wings fluttered behind his back as he landed in front of Alec, who stared at him with bated breath. The boar cleared his throat, clearly reluctant to admit the fact that he forgot about Kyle after sensing Odiak's aura in Alec's body. Alec snapped out of his trance and let out a wry smile. So you are Haley. Indeed, Kyle doesn't need help with you around. The boar nodded in agreement. However, he was not here to talk about himself. That's why he immediately focused on the question he wanted to ask the human. Alec, I sensed a faint aura inside your body. It belonged to someone I know. Can you tell me if you had an encounter with someone strong in the outside world, maybe an old dwarf? Alec thought for a few seconds and shook his head. All the strong people he knew were humans. Haley let out a sigh and eyed him from all directions. If only he could peer inside his body to check where the aura was coming from. However, it was impossible. He could only sense it, not see it. I guess it's just a coincidence and you don't know anything. With a shake of his head, the boar opened his wings, ready to fly away, but suddenly Alec stopped him. Wait, Haley gazed at the human and let out a sigh. If you want to ask for help in finding treasures, then I must apologize, I am not allowed to. Alec was surprised and a little perplexed. Can he only help Kyle? He threw the matter at the back of his head with a sour expression. It was better to not think about it, or else he would feel unfair. No, I am not asking for help. I just want to know about something. Alec passed for a few seconds and gazed at the failed missions that had been filling the system interference after he entered the secret realm. Mission. XX, find the divine essence stored in the last treasure island. Treasure island location in the north underneath a mountain. Reward 1 times divine essence penalty, none failed mission. XX find the resonite gem stored in the 12 Treasure Island. Treasure Island location in the west. Reward 1 times S rank skill knowledge penalty sub-rank knowledge failed mission. XX find the enchanted hot spring. Location in the west. Reward times 1 S rank healing skill plus 3 sub-rank. Penalty, none failed. Alec massaged his temples with a groan. He somewhat knew the locations of the missions, but witnessing the cruelty of the dark race made him angry. That's why he couldn't complete the missions on time. Or, to be more specific, someone else had already taken the treasures before him. And for some reason, he had this nagging feeling in the back of his head that all this was done by a single person. At first he thought maybe it was Kyle. However, he crossed Kyle's name because when the mission about the hot spring failed, he met Kyle almost instantly. Also, they were both in the dark race territory. Kyle couldn't possibly stumble upon the hot spring immediately after he fought an intense battle with Emion. Or could he? The divine essence and resonite gem are okay. But what the heck did the person do with the hot spring? Don't tell me he drank the water or just destroyed it completely after using it. I swear I am going to rough up the person who is playing with my emotions. He did not even realize his conflicted emotions were showing up on his face. The boar gazed at him with narrowed eyes when he showed a dark expression. What happened? Alec shook his head and immediately changed his expression into a smile. Nothing. I just want to know what is a resonite gem and divine essence. Huh? Haley stared at him for a few seconds, dumbfounded. He blinked, thinking maybe he heard wrong, but Alec was clearly asking about the divine essence and the resonite gem that even he knew nothing about. He only found out about the resonite gem due to Kyle. The boar opened his mouth but closed it again. First, he sucked in a deep breath to calm down and then stared at Alec with a deadly serious expression. How do you know about them? Alec opened his mouth to lie. After all, he could not possibly reveal the system's presence, but before he could speak, a strange notification flashed in front of his eyes. He stared at the screen in front of his eyes with shock. Ask him, who is Odiak? It was the first time the system sent such a notification to him. After all, the system only ever asked him to complete missions and gave him rewards. Alec gulped down his nervousness and repeated the words. Who is Odiak? Haley's jaw hung open as he stared at the human in front of him. In the end, he could only blurt out a single word. How? Chapter 324, if I am really the one. It took Haley a whole minute to digest Alec's words. He gazed at the human from head to toe again and again. At first, Kyle's presence itself was an anomaly for him, and now Alec as well. How the hell do you know about Odiak? Alec jolted when Haley's sharp eyes narrowed at him. He opened his mouth, but was at a loss for how to explain himself. His eyes flashed with conflicted emotions as he looked back and forth between the glowing screen and Haley's face. Inside his mind, Alec cursed at the system, but it remained eerily silent. However, fortunately, before he could have a mental breakdown under Haley's sharp eyes, the system screen flashed again. Alec's eyes widened when the system asked him to tell the boar about its presence. Opposite him, Haley's eyes flashed with skepticism as he observed Alec's strange behavior. For some reason, the human was just staring into the air. Alec sucked in a deep breath and spilled everything. He began by recounting the time when he first received the system and how it started assigning him missions. He didn't go into many details, but while he was talking, Haley fell silent. The boar listened attentively from start to finish. Once Alec finished, Haley let out a big sigh. He moved his paw and massaged his head. From Alec's explanation, he immediately understood the origin of Odiak aura within the human body. It was Soul, the first and last divine artifact constructed by Odiak. So, from the start, Odiak consciousness chose Alec. Haley's mind wandered as he processed the information. He knew that Odiak had left a part of his consciousness behind, but he never expected the dwarf to also leave behind the divine artifact. After all, divine artifacts, just as their name suggests, are incredibly precious and rare. Not many have the ability to create them. Suddenly, Haley thought about the time he told Kyle about James and Odiak, and a dry smile appeared on his face. Seems like I made a mistake. It was Alec who was supposed to know that knowledge, not Kyle. Haley gazed at Alec and tapped the place beside himself. Let's sit, we have a lot to talk about. Alec gingerly sat down beside Haley as the boar repeated the same things he had told Kyle. However, unlike Kyle, Alec asked a lot of questions, and Haley had to painfully admit that explaining to Kyle was much easier than to Alec. In the end, the boar first told Alec about the ranks above SSS plus rank. Unbeknownst to him, Alec's expression grew paler as he heard Haley's explanation. Once Haley finished, Alec asked some of the same questions as Kyle. First, he asked if the planet was safe now or if Odiak and James had perished out there. Unfortunately, Haley could only shake his head in response. He knew nothing about what had happened in the outside world. However, Alec's final question left Haley speechless. Can you tell me who took the divine essence? I believe if the system is asking me to get it, it's important for my growth. The corner of Alec's lips trickled upward into an barely visible evil smile. Finally, he could know about the culprit who claimed the rewards of all his missions. But his smile stiffened when he heard a familiar name from the boar's mouth. Alec wiped his imaginary tears and hurriedly tossed his grief at the back of his head. Forget about revenge. With his current strength, he could not even fight an equal battle with Kyle. I remember Kyle was flying before he turned into a kid. What's his rank? I know it's higher than S rank, but how much? Alec paused for a second. Also, for some reason, the system's appraisal skill didn't work on Kyle. Haley blinked, seemingly thinking about Kyle's rank. I sensed his rank while he was fighting with Emion, and it's still S rank. It's strange with the amount of treasures he is consuming, he should have broken through to the next rank, but for some reason, his body needs double the amount of what is needed by an ordinary person. Alec nodded. I cannot believe Kyle consumed the divine essence in a whole enchanted hot spring and he is still in S rank. Haley let out a chuckle. Consuming the divine essence is not an easy task. I believe there is something special within his body. Alec's eyes narrowed in contemplation. He remembered when he discovered Kyle's talent in the tower, but now he wasn't so sure. If Kyle could consume the divine essence, did that mean his talent was even greater than Alec had imagined? Ah, what am I thinking? Does talent even matter now? I believe I have more important things to focus on. He gazed at the clear sky. The weight on his shoulder increased. At first, he wanted to save the innocent people from the destruction he witnessed through the system, but now what? With the new knowledge Haley shared, he realized things were not as simple as they seemed. If Odiak and James were truly successful in defeating the Shadow General, then why haven't they returned? And why would the system choose him if the planet is already safe? While Alec was lost in his thoughts, Haley spread out his wings with a faint smile. I'll come see you later. I should go check on Kyle. Maybe he's cursing me right now. Alec watched as Haley soared into the sky and disappeared from his sight. With a sigh, Alec gazed at the sword hanging on his waist. He clutched it tightly with a sigh. I wonder if I am really the one. Everything is so confusing. He shook his head and jumped on his feet. With a last glance at the system's status window, Alec ran off toward the nearest treasure island. After all, he needs to get stronger. So much so that he could fight against the danger lurking outside the planet. A faint smile appeared on his face when he thought about his friends. I believe I won't be alone. But after he climbed the stairway and stood opposite the castle gate, his smile stiffened. Alec's eyes twitched as he scanned the castle gate, where a prominent and unmistakable warning was displayed. Caution, don't enter, the little phoenix took everything. Chapter 325, At least I loved my bed. Haley's gaze wandered off to the majestic phoenix flying across the sky, specifically eyeing the dark-faced human sitting on Bia's back. With a hesitant sigh, he transformed into a white fur ball, floating around to catch the phoenix's attention. Bia's eyes lit up the moment she saw the light. Finally, he is here. Kyla heard her voice and gave the ball a dangerous look. The ball flinched but settled on his shoulder. Haley let out an awkward chuckle. Actually, but before he could finish his explanation, Kyle ignored him with a blank expression. Just tell me, where is the treasure island that we are searching for? Haley blinked and gazed at Bia. What happened to him? Bia's wings fluttered gracefully as she laughed inwardly. Ignore him, he's been like that for a while now. Haley hummed softly, guiding the duo as they soared further toward the east. The wind rushed through Kyle's hair, and after what felt like an eternity, the phoenix finally came to a stop above a towering mountain. Bia dived down and lowered her body on the mountain's surface. Instantly, Kyle left her back and surveyed the scene before him. He narrowed his eyes at the two similar-looking castles floating around the mountain before looking at Haley. Which one? Strange, I remember there was only one, Haley muttered, furrowing his brow in confusion. Wait, let me go check which one we need to enter. Kyle gave him a quick nod and the ball vanished into one of the castles. But to his surprise, the ball emerged after just a few seconds. Haley blinked, and after floating midair for a while, he entered the second castle. Bia transformed back into her small form and landed on Kyle's head. Kyle staggered a little due to her weight but managed to maintain his balance. With a mischievous glint in her eye, Bia ruffled his hair with her paws, creating a big mess before settling comfortably on top of his head. An angry vein bulged on Kyle's forehead as he raised his hand to swat the bird away. However, his attention was quickly diverted by Haley, who had been going in and out of the two castles. What is he doing, I wonder as well. The duo watched Haley, and after 2 long minutes the boar transformed back into his original form. He gazed at Kyle with a complicated expression. Kyle stepped forward, but due to the weight on his head he almost tripped on his feet. When did you become so heavy? With a glare, he hurriedly grabbed Bia and tossed her back before walking toward the boar. What happened? Haley's eyes flashed with a serious expression. I checked both the castles and they both have the same number, 965. Kyle raised his brow with an O. He gazed at the castles. What about the cure? Do they both have it? Haley shook his head. I wasn't able to check any chamber, let alone the treasure chamber, so I don't know if the cure is there. With a frown, Kyle waved his hand at Bia. Let's just enter. It's not like we have any other option. Bia circled Kyle's head as he approached the nearest castle. As if in response to his presence, a stairway emerged from the castle. Kyle ascended the stairway and pushed open the gate. As he stepped inside, a familiar darkness blurred his vision. He thought he would feel nothing, just like before, but the moment the darkness engulfed his body, his head buzzed with a loud ringing sound, enough to make him grit his teeth. In response to the overwhelming sensation, Kyle instinctively grabbed his ears. As soon as his feet touched a solid surface, he couldn't hold back any longer and threw out all the contents of his stomach. His expression turned pale as he wiped his mouth. Damn it! After a few seconds, Kyle looked up at the empty and dark corridor stretching out before him. Bia, his voice echoed in all directions as he cautiously stepped onto the carpeted floor, searching for the boundary of the treasure island. A familiar panicked voice rang inside his head. Where the hell are you? Me and Haley got thrown out the moment we entered the gate. Kyle's expression fell as he looked around himself. The corridor was eerily quiet, with only the sound of his footsteps reverberating through the silence. Fuck, don't tell me I have to complete the trial alone. He cursed under his breath for a whole minute before taking a deep breath to calm himself down. He hurriedly silenced the voice ringing in his head. I am fine, just stay quiet until I am out. Kyle's eyes wandered on the space around him as he walked in the corridor. Amidst the dark space, a bright spark flashed beneath his feet. He snapped his eyes down and watched as the spark stretched out like a snake, disappearing into the distance. Kyle kept his eyes on the light as he followed behind it. However, the more he walked, the corridor seemed to extend endlessly as if there was no end in sight. After 2 long hours, Kyle's legs wobbled as he tried to maintain his balance. Now, his little body was not enhanced with mana, so the fact that he had managed to walk for so long was already a miracle for him. I wonder how I survived all those years when I was a kid. He gasped for breath and held his knees with a sweaty forehead as he recalled the time when he was 5 years old. Wow, I was just a small, unruly kid who, for some reason, hated work, study, and almost everything related to exertion. Well, at least I loved my bed. His voice echoed in the corridor before his own voice whispered in his ear. Damn it, where is my favorite pillow? What? Kyle's eyes widened with astonishment as the spark beneath his feet gathered, conjuring an old yet unfamiliar image before him. He blinked, watching a silver-haired boy throwing a tantrum over a pillow in an ordinary room. No way, I never did that, Kyle gasped, shouting in disbelief. If the light was going to show him illusions, they should at least be realistic. He may have been unruly, but throwing tantrums was not his thing. Suddenly, the silver-haired figure in the image tilted his head, looking at Kyle with a confused expression. But you said you like beds. Kyle's eyes widened as he opened his mouth but then quickly closed it. What the hell, why am I arguing with something that can potentially harm me? Chapter 326, Have a Try Boy. Kyle's hand became sweaty as he took a step back, fully intending to run away in the direction he came from. As if the figure in the image noticed Kyle's movement, it blinked, and in the next second the image vanished into thin air, replaced by a large crystal-scaled chameleon. The chameleon's large and slender body slithered around Kyle, who staggered on his feet and dropped to his butt. Kyle's eyes met the chameleon's large, blue, beady eyes midair, and he let out a startled hiccup. He quickly closed his mouth, preparing to use the blue flames, his only weapon at the moment. Another option was to gather all his strength and leap over the lizard-like creature and empty his mind space onto its head. However, before he could make a move, the chameleon's curled tail gently wrapped around his body. The blue eyes flashed with confusion as they peered at Kyle from head to toe again and again. Wait, what am I supposed to do? It's been so long, my memory is too blurry. Who are you, kid? Kyle let out another hiccup and removed his hand to suck in a harsh breath. His eyes traveled at the scaly tail wrapped around his body. First. Let me go, he just blurted out whatever came to mind, but to his surprise, the lizard-like creature actually let him go. Kyle's feet touched the carpeted floor, and a wave of relief washed over his body. It took him a moment to comprehend the situation, but when he did, the previous panic vanished from his eyes, replaced by a delighted glint. The lizard-like creature continued to gaze at him, seemingly perplexed, when Kyle let out a pained sigh. He looked away and spoke in a voice that the lizard could hear clearly. I'm lost. I mean, my parents would be so worried about me and I am stuck in this never-ending corridor. The chameleon's crystal-clear body flashed with sparks as he lowered his head to listen to Kyle more clearly, his ears perking up with interest. He blinked and a distant memory appeared in his head that he was not supposed to do this. But how long had been since he last heard another person's voice? 1,000 years? Or 2? He couldn't remember. Kyle wiped his dry eyes with his big sleeves. He couldn't help but wonder why was he so good at acting. After staring down the corridor for a few seconds, he turned his gaze towards the lizard and asked a hesitant question. So, what about you? The chameleon's blue eyes flashed with a little confusion, but he was more than willing to talk with someone after so long. I am a bonded beast, but I don't remember who my master is. You can call me Riss. Kyle raised his eyebrow with an O. He really wanted to ask if his master was Odiak or James, but some things were best left unsaid. I should find the cure first. Once I am out, Haley can take care of this lizard. Riss, do you know the exit of this place, or maybe the location of a strange white room filled with— The chameleon eyed the corridor and let out a sigh. I don't. I was sleeping and you woke me up. How about we find it together? Kyle jumped on his feet and gave him a quick nod. Riss' body flashed inside the corridor, but only after a few seconds he stopped and looked back at Kyle. The kid was standing at the same spot. Hey, follow me, Kyle blinked with an innocent expression. After walking for 2 hours, I am tired. Riss went back toward him and circled his body with a pondering expression. Do you want to climb on my shoulder? Kyle's lips trickle upward into a smile. Riss lowered his body and he grabbed his scales to climb up. Riss started moving in the corridor and Kyle let out an evil laugh in his head. All his previous frustration evaporated into thin air. This journey is gonna be the smoothest one ever. Bia, who heard his laugh, shuddered. What the heck are you doing inside? Don't tell me you finally went crazy after the shock. Kyle hummed sweetly in reply, not even caring about the fact that due to his words, the duo outside panicked. Fortunately, Bia could sense his emotions faintly, or else she would have tried to blast the castle gate with everything she had. Riss sensed his smile and frowned. He had this nagging feeling at the back of his head that he was supposed to punish or test the kid for some reason, but no matter how much he searched his mind, he couldn't piece together what he was supposed to do. In the end, he tossed the matter at the back of his head as they traveled in the endless corridor. As they wandered around the corridor, Riss suddenly stopped. Kyle's eyes traveled down to the lizard beneath him. What's wrong? Riss blinked and slowly started climbing the nearby wall. I think I know how we can leave the corridor. Oh, Kyle didn't dare to say more, afraid that the lizard might remember everything and discard him like a piece of clothing. He shook his head, not even daring to think about the worst. After circling the wall for 10 long minutes, Riss let out a victorious chuckle. He leaped down from the wall and touched a dark spot with his paw. Kyle's eyes narrowed when he noticed a faint movement in the air. An array. In the next second, a slight tremor shook the corridor, and then the air in front of them twisted, forming a bright portal. Riss looked at the portal, his eyes flashing with some memories. He hummed, trying to piece everything together. While he was thinking, Kyle quickly jumped off his shoulder and entered the portal without even sparing him a glance. Riss blinked and gazed at Kyle's fading back. Suddenly, his eyes widened because he finally remembered what he was supposed to do. Wait! With a sharp and loud cry, he jumped into the portal behind Kyle, but unfortunately it was too late. The chameleon's eyes narrowed into slits as he appeared in a white room. The room was empty, except for an old table in the center. The same silver-haired kid was standing beside the table, looking back with a smirk. In his hand he held a little glass bottle that he tossed in the air. Kyle placed his other hand on his chest with crescent eyes. Thank you. Riss' eyes turned red with anger. You bastard. How dare you take advantage of my weak memory? He let out a laugh and narrowed his eyes dangerously at Kyle. You think you can leave this place? Kyle blinked and unclasped the bottle with his fingers. Instantly he gulped down the contents without even thinking twice. Riss leaped at him with stunned eyes, but he froze when a bright light flashed around Kyle's body. After the light vanished, Kyle felt refreshed. The illusion on him dissipated in an instant, and his body returned to its original shape and size. Kyle gazed at the stunned lizard and flashed a smile. After all, he could see the exit portal from the corner of his eyes. I should go now, Riss let out a laugh. Countless sparks flew out from his body to surround Kyle from all directions. Have a try, boy. His sentence was cut short because Kyle vanished into thin air. Riss' mouth hung open and he snapped his head toward the portal when a laugh echoed in the air. Kyle waved his hand and blinked at him one last time before jumping into the portal without looking back. Chapter 327, The Strongest Generation. Bia's eyelids fluttered shut as she made herself comfortable opposite the castle's stairway. Haley's gaze wandered around the phoenix and he couldn't help but let out a chuckle. So after all that worrying, now you're going to sleep? Bia opened one eye to peek at him. For some reason, after hearing his evil laugh, I think he's doing just fine. Haley blinked at her answer, but then he let out a hearty laughter. Even though I haven't heard his laugh, I am having the same feeling. The duo basked under the warm sunlight on the mountain, enjoying the serene and calm atmosphere. However, after a few hours, the peaceful moment was abruptly shattered when the air in front of the castle twisted to form a bright portal. Haley's eyes widened slightly. He couldn't believe it. Kyle had managed to complete the castle trail in just a few hours. How was that even possible? Was the punishment trial so easy that even a 5-year-old kid can complete it? He mumbled under his breath, contemplating that maybe it was not as hard as he thought. On his left, Bia burst into laughter. She spread out her wings to fly toward the portal. In an instant, the portal pulsed, and a familiar figure emerged. Kyle's silver hair fluttered beautifully as he flashed a faint smile. Haley's eyes met Kyle's midair, and for a moment he swore he saw a strange glint in those green eyes. But before he could process anything, Kyle kicked off his foot and vanished into thin air. Haley blinked and Bea froze in her spot as Kyle's figure materialized behind the boar. The moment Kyle vanished, a loud cry rang out from the portal, and a large crystal-scaled chameleon stepped out. Bea's eyes dilated when she faintly sensed the lizard-like creature's rank. She quickly flapped her wings to distance herself from the portal. "What the hell did you do now?" Her panicked eyes wandered toward Kyle, who was hiding behind Haley. Even the boar was stunned. Meanwhile, Riss's eyes dangerously zeroed in on the silver-haired human. He let out an evil laugh, an angry vein bulging out on his forehead. "Very well, human, you have successfully entered my radar. How dare you take advantage of my jumbled memories? Do you think I will let you go?" Haley opened his mouth, shocked. "Riss, huh?" The chameleon finally noticed the winged boar, and just like Haley, his eyes widened slightly. Memories flashed in his eyes as he blinked. Kyle glanced at the duo and slowly tiptoed away from Haley. Swiftly, he distanced himself from the boar and vanished into thin air before anyone could notice. "Bea, we're leaving. Let the old friends have their conversation." The phoenix snapped out of her daze and quickly flew away in another direction. Unaware of the two individuals who had run off, Riss let out a surprised gasp. "Little Haley. Wow, how long has it been? What are you doing here? Last I remember, you were bound to the last treasure island." Haley smiled, but one could see the irritation in his eyes. "I believe I am not little anymore." Right, Riss's body flashed, emitting countless glowing sparks as he circled the boar with a hum. But then he remembered he was supposed to be following someone. "Wait, where is the human?" His eyes widened as he stared at Haley. "Don't tell me he ran off." Haley's lips twitched and he barely stopped them from curling up into a smile. He had a hunch about what happened. After all, he knew that Riss sometimes had issues with his brain. The boar cleared his throat and composed his expression. "What did he do?" Riss's face darkened and his body flashed around the floating castle as he sniffed the air. "That little prick sure knows how to put on a show. Not many have dared to break the rules in this place, and since Master closed off the realm, I haven't had a chance to open my eyes. But I can't believe the first thing I experience is deception." He kept sniffing the air, hoping to catch a trace of Kyle's presence. But after a few minutes, his face fell. "I thought it was due to the illusion that I couldn't sense him, but why in the world am I still unable to sense him?" Haley let out a weary sigh, but his crescent eyes revealed a different story altogether. "Leave it, you won't be able to sense him. I can't either. He is wearing an artifact." Riss blinked and gazed at the boar with a blank expression. "You are joking, right?" Haley shook his head, his ears perking up with delight. In the past, Odiak and his master would always push him to train with the lizard, and even though he hated to admit it, he would always end up losing whenever they had a real battle. Riss cried out and slammed his tail on the ground. "Ugh. I was supposed to make him suffer with his darkest desire, with his worst nightmare. How could he just slip through my fingers like that?" His tongue darted out to lick his lips as he gazed in the distance. "Should I go look for him?" However, like a sudden splash of cold water, Haley's next words left him speechless. "Forget about it, he's the one who asked me that question Odiak left behind." Riss stared at the boar with shock and a bit of suspicion. Yet he couldn't detect any deceit in Haley's eyes. How could he? After all, Kyle really asked Haley the question. With a frustrated groan, the chameleon started walking away from the mountain. The crystal scales on his body shimmered with bright sparks under the sunlight. "Whatever, I am just gonna go get some fresh air. It's been a while after all." Haley chuckled and followed behind him. "Let's watch the kids. There are a lot of strong individuals who have entered the realm this time." Soon, the duo disappeared into the distance. Once they were gone, Kyle's body materialized in the air. He gazed at the peaceful mountain and looked towards the second castle he had yet to enter. Bea's tiny figure appeared beside him. She circled him before settling on his head with a satisfied sigh. "Gone. Why are we here again?" Kyle rubbed his hands together and his lip trickled upward into a faint smile. "Let's explore the second castle. I have a feeling we will need another cure for the future." Bea clicked her tongue. "You still wanna break the rules?" "Who said I do? I'm just taking extra precautions." "Oh, so you're doing it when the Guardian's gone." Kyle ignored her words and flew toward the second castle without hesitation. Now, with the dark race gone and his body back to normal, he felt confident in plundering all the treasures from this realm. At the other end of the realm, Gil's body was ruthlessly thrown into a mountain. Dust and debris filled the air as the once towering mountain collapsed into a heap of shattered fragments. Emerging from the wreckage, the winged man let out a burst of maniacal laughter that echoed through the desolate landscape. "How dare those weak outsiders kill my people? I will make them pay." A far contrast to his bloodied condition, his coal-black eyes burned with a fiery rage, capable of obliterating everything in his path. However, before he could take any action, an illusionary old man materialized in front of him. "Stop, Gil, you are not supposed to meddle in the affairs of mortals." Gil cried out. He clawed into his head with a crazed expression. "Haha, I am going to kill them all, no one will go back alive." The illusionary old man's face flickered with complicated emotions as he eyed the man before him. "You know, it's quite ironic. Last time, when the secret realm was opened, your people ruthlessly took the lives of everyone who entered. Now the tables have turned, so why does it make you so furious?" Gil's face darkened as he spat out a mouthful of blood. He narrowed his eyes at the illusionary figure with a mocking glint. "How much longer can you hold on, old man?" The illusionary old man raised an eyebrow in response. "Don't worry, it's going to be longer than you expect. I believe I can keep you busy until they all make it out safely." With a laugh, the winged man flapped his wings and zoomed towards the figure. His bloodied eyes dangerously narrowed in on the old man. "Are you sure? The realm exit won't open for another 2 years. Yet," he dragged his words and gazed at the flickering light particles surrounding the illusionary figure. "Your body is crumbling." The old man let out a scoff. "If my last moment arrives, I will make sure to take you with me." They fought for 2 whole days before Gil's body was once again thrown into the distance. The old man eyed his panting figure and gazed back in the distance. The air was humming, and with the dark race gone, the youngsters were exploring the treasure islands without much trouble. Not like the old times, but this generation is indeed the strongest. I believe now I don't need to worry about them. They will explore the realm, clear the trials, and leave when it's time."